Chapter 748, 296 Lying to Win, Jiang Shijue_4 Jiang Fulai was indifferent to the songs for Yen Lu, his long and powerful fingers resting on the armrests on both sides of the seat, casually glanced at the computer screen, and then his gaze moved to her face. She wore a celadon-colored top today, her hair was entirely pinned up with a pin that faintly emitted a purple hue, revealing a pair of dark eyebrows. Her facial features exuded a lazy scholarly air. "Come and take a look." Bai Lian didn't bother with Hu Yu's flooding messages, replying with 2 words to Dean Jian. Jiang Fulai leaned over, his lips landing gently yet firmly at the corner of hers. "Wait for me a bit, let's go out for dinner." He had casual wear on standby here, grabbed an outfit and went to the bathroom at the back to shower. "Outside." Jiang Shijue leaned on the bar, his eyes on the door to the lounge, casually talking to Ming Dongheng lifting weights nearby. "Xiaoming, is Miss Bai really in there?" Answered Ming Dongheng lifting a dumbbell with one hand, his response light and unaffected. Thank heavens, after more than a year, Jiang Shijue was finally going to meet Bai Lian in person. Everyone from the Jiang family to Gao Shu's group was curious about Bai Lian's existence. Such a person had only appeared once in the Jiang family in 100 years. Without him, the Jiang family might have become as fragmented as the Mu family and gradually faded from Xinjiang district. Jiang Shijue was highly curious about who had tamed a bewitching existence like Jiang Fulai, especially after hearing Ming Dongheng's description. A milk tea with double sugar, was that something Jiang Fulai would bother to pick up with his fingers? Of course, curious as he was, Jiang Shijue had never investigated Bai Lian. Everything he knew came from what he heard from Su Nanjing's and Ming Dongheng's mouths. Will her presence be stronger than Sister Baixuan's? Jiang Shijue straightened his collar. As he was speaking, the door to the lounge was pushed open from the inside. Jiang Shijue quickly dropped his hand, standing tall outside the door, dignified with the authority of Zongxing's executive CO, hands at his sides, also displaying a polite demeanor. Beside him, Ming Dongheng, who hadn't been paying much attention to Jiang Shijue, also put down his weights. The first to come out was Jiang Fulai. He wore a black coat, speaking softly to the person behind him, holding a checkered scarf in his hand, with a white cloak casually draped over one arm. Clearly the cloak wasn't his. Jiang Shijue was taken aback at the sight and only then saw the girl behind Jiang Fulai. She was only holding a laptop, wearing a casual celadon top, white buttons done up to her neck, her eyebrows modestly lowered. She wasn't what Jiang Shijue had imagined, instead she had a subdued lazy air. Chapter 749, Jiangjing's Top Circle, taking Wenjixia to the Su family to admire the plum blossoms. _1 Mathematics requires a certain talent. If you don't understand a problem, even a teacher's 10 years of explanation would be useless. Aside from that, it also requires a passion and practical skills. Ning Xiao had never received formal tutoring in mathematics, and yet, back in Xiangqing he was already considered on par with Ren Wanxian and Chen Zhu. Later on, he joined the enhanced class and with guidance from Jiang Fulai, his long-term foundation and hard work meant that his current research on a project and direction was in no way inferior to Hu Yu. There's no need to mention Bai Lian. She had already understood the concept of integration back in Dayong, where they used A, B, C, D, instead of the simplified numbers of today. Previously, her master had only taught her about measuring land and constructing specific diagrams of riverbanks and water channels. Modern science was a powerful addition to her arsenal. Zhou Wenqing's lab had few students, and the department head had issued an ultimatum. The lab was busy recently. Senior Liu and others were researching palladium experiments, and Hu Yu was earnestly instructing her juniors in data calculation. What Bai Lian gave her were the quantum bits with different parameters that needed to be calculated. Their research focus was on superconductors, inevitably involving the consideration of quantum tunneling related to superconducting quantum computing. This was a crucial part of their project. Hu Yu planned to first familiarize her juniors with this project, but to her surprise, in just a week, Bai Lian had already given her parts of the calculated results. And then there was Ning Xiao. At this moment, Hu Yu was truly wide awake. She turned on her computer to check the material structural model provided by Ning Xiao. One bit after another. Hu Yu did not leave the lab. Instead, she took out her phone to contact Senior Liu. Senior Liu had already showered and was ready to sleep when he received Hu Yu's call. Puzzled, he asked, "Junior sister, you're not asleep yet?" "I can't sleep anymore, senior brother," Hu Yu said spiritedly as she looked at the computer. "Come over and look at the material model Ning Xiao constructed and also the quantum parameters estimated by Junior Bai. Come to the lab first and see." Previously, due to the insufficient palladium, the number of quantum bits they captured wasn't stable. The dozy Senior Lu hurriedly grabbed his coat and headed to the lab. At 3 in the morning, Senior Lu and Hu finished reviewing the results achieved by Bai Lian and Ning Xiao over the past week or so. They looked at each other in astonishment. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 750. Jiangjing's Top Circle, taking Wen Jixia to the Su family to admire the plum blossoms. _2 Influenced by Tang Ming, he always referred to Ning Xiao as the study god, and the forums all knew this title by now. And indeed, he truly lived up to the name of study god. That's not how you calculate it. Did the original poster not consider the hard requirements? Bai Lian and Ning Xiao are certainly smart, but Gao Yuan is from the Gao family, and lately I haven't seen Bai Lian and the others much. Looking at Gao Yuan's social media, they have been continuously preparing for this year's Jianghu University Science and Research Contest, getting ready for the boss training camp. Bai Lian should be smarter than Ning Xiao, but why haven't I seen her at the preparation camp? A bit disappointing. According to incomplete statistics, the school only gave Xiangqing 2 spots for the preparation camp. She probably didn't register. People on the forum were arguing noisily, with many being fans of Bai Lian, staunchly supporting her and her group. But most remained rational, questioning whether Zhou Wenqing and his team's project could even continue into the end of the year. Bai Lian was unaware of everything on the forums. For the past week, she had been helping Hu Yu and the others with data modeling, and most of the time, it was Tang Ming and his team who took turns bringing food to the laboratory. After handing over the processed data to Hu Yu, the next evening Bai Lian took her laptop and said to Hu Yu, "Senior sister, Ning Xiao and I won't be coming to the lab these next few days." The new junior didn't need someone to guide her, and she could even help with the core data. Especially since she could also earn a lot of gold coins. Where could you find such a junior? Hu Yu stopped her discussion with Ding Wenyang, preparing to see Bai Lian off. "Junior sister, you have things to do, and even if you're busy until the end of the semester, that's fine. This little bit of research, Ding Wenyang and I will handle it with ease." "Junior sister, goodbye." She stood at the entrance of the laboratory building, waiting until Bai Lian was out of sight before she couldn't help but jubilantly return to the lab. She began chatting with Ding Wenyang about the gossips on the forum. "Little Ding, does Ning Xiao really have over 4 million points?" There had been a lot of discussion about Ning Xiao on the forum lately. Many doubted the authenticity of the over 4 million points since even Gao Yuan had only more than 2 million points, and with Ning Xiao himself not confirming it, some suspected it was an upperclassman with the same name. "Yes, what about it?" Ding Wenyang handed the report he had printed out to Hu Yu. Hu Yu, she felt these newcomers had a talent for driving people crazy. Chapter 751. Jiangjing's Top Circle, taking Wen Jixia to the Su family to admire the plum blossoms. _3 Bai Lian could only hand over the gift to Jianghu Lai, to pass it on for her. Both were busy, and although they were in the same city of Jiangjing, their opportunities to meet towards the year-end were even fewer than in Xiangqing. Bai Lian picked up the elegant sandalwood box and sat down. The box was a bit heavy, she didn't open it immediately, but talked with Jianghu Lai about the recent laboratory work. Although Zhou Wenqing's lab was busy, the atmosphere was very good. Jianghu Lai, watching her speak energetically about the lab, didn't ask her any further questions about the lab and Ning Xiao. "I'm planning to bring a silk scarf embroidered by my grandfather for Aunt Gao," Bai Lian said while playing with the sandalwood box, telling Jianghu Lai about Gao Yan inviting her to enjoy the plum blossoms. A few days ago, Gao Yan had invited Bai Lian and Gao Shu to the Su family's plum blossom admiring event. Gao Shu was busy with the transfer of responsibilities at the drama theater, and Bai Lian had been in the lab all along, so the plum viewing had not been scheduled to date. "That'll work." Jianghu Lai had heard about this from Bai Lian long ago. "I've had Ming Dongheng prepare other items for you, you can just take them with you when the time comes." In the span of nearly a year, Su Nanjing and Gao Yan had given Bai Lian quite a few gifts. And that included the home tutor that Gao Yan had tried but failed to gift her. Bai Lian's fingertips tapped on the sandalwood box. Her phone lit up a few times. It was a message from her racing buddy. "Racing buddy, engagement on the 28th of the 12th lunar month. Racing buddy. Racing tonight." Since coming to Jiangjing, Bai Lian seldom went racing, and with the recent lab work even less so. However, she was somewhat aware of the affairs of the Wen family. Next to her, Jianghu Lai kept talking to her, and without Bai Lian deliberately hiding her phone screen from him, he naturally saw the message flashed up, his face as aloof as ever, his long lashes only slightly drooped. The race tracks in Jiangjing are very slick right now. His slender fingertips closed the laptop on the table in front of them, ready to have a serious conversation with her. I know, Bai Lian said nonchalantly, tapping on her phone. He'll bring a friend along. I'm not sure if Aunt Gao would mind. Jianghu Lai raised an eyebrow, slowly saying, if you refrain from dangerous outdoor activities, I could move her plum garden into Shanghai apartment without a problem. Bai Lian sent a somewhat regretful message to her racing buddy. The weather is too dangerous. Would you like to admire the plum blossoms instead? Racing buddy? On the other side of the phone. Chapter 752, Jiangjing's Top Circle, taking Wen Zhixia to the Su family to admire the plum blossoms. _4 Actually, Wen Zhixia also knew her own situation. She was not originally from Jiangjing, and she couldn't fit in with the group of socialites there. Wen Jiwei got along well with those socialites, so they all intentionally or unintentionally isolated her, especially those who had dealings with the Wen family. Wen Zhixia was very aware that she had been pushed out of the circle by these people from Jiangjing. Those people were clearly telling her with their actions not to force herself into a different circle. To enjoy the plum blossoms? The elderly Mrs. Wen looked at her, nodding with a smile. That's also fine. Is it the friend you met with last time? When can you invite her over to our Wen family so Grandma can meet her too? When Zhixia thought about Bai Lian's current dog-like appearance and leaned back, you'll see her on the engagement day. Don't worry, you'll definitely like her. Their chat concluded. When Zhixia went back up to her own room, the butler stood behind her like a ghost. Miss, you should still try to fit into this circle as much as you can. The gathering this time is organized by Miss Lung, and that second miss from the Su family will definitely be there. Butler, don't worry. When Zhixia kicked open the door to her room, retorting, have a look at the stocks I've had you buying recently, haven't they gone up? The butler paused as he looked at her composed face, naturally happy about the increase in the private funds, unable to fault Wen Zixia's abilities. She indeed had her own ideas, otherwise the Yu family wouldn't have taken an interest in her. After a pause, he asked again in a low voice, Miss, are you really going to enjoy the plum blossoms? Or is it street racing? When Zhixia, pressing on her phone, ground her teeth and replied to Bai Lian, appreciate, whoever doesn't appreciate is a dog. She closed the door, and the butler stood outside for a while, the smile on his face disappearing as he sighed. After returning downstairs, the old Mrs. Wen also stood at the door in a daze. They both knew that Wen Zhixia had just returned to Jiangjing and had not been accepted into many circles, and it was obvious that Wen Jiwei was also excluding her. Who is her friend? The elderly Mrs. Wen whispered softly. An alumnus from Beijing. Beijing, ha! Mrs. Wen's eyes dimmed with some regret for not bringing Wen Zhixia back earlier, which led to the current situation. Let it be, let her have fun for a while. She won't be free for much longer. The next day. Sunday, 7 o'clock in the morning. The Su family also owned a vast estate. Gao Yan lived in the Tsufeng court located on the south side of the estate. Across an arched bridge was the neighboring plum garden. Chapter 753, 298 Shocks Zhixia. What has she done in Xiangqing? First update, _1 The weekend break meant the morning traffic was light. Su family's butler had been waiting outside early in the morning. At 8:30, he saw a black car approaching from the side and immediately notified Gao Yan that Bai Lian had arrived. He then ordered someone to open the side gate beside Guangliang's main entrance, allowing the car to enter. The car drove all the way to the front courtyard and stopped. Today, hearing that Bai Lian and Gao Shu would visit the Su family, both Su Nanjing and Su Juling had not left home, and Gao Shu had not yet arrived at this point. Upon hearing from the butler that Bai Lian and Jianghu Lai had arrived, Gao Yan put down the small hexagonal rui lantern she was holding. Seeing Gao Yan head outside, Su Juling and Su Nanjing, who were sitting in the front hall, also put down their cups and stood up to walk towards the Chuehua gate. The three of them had just reached the Chuehua gate when the butler led Bai Lian and Jianghu Lai through the arch bridge to come in. Su Juling stood in the center, instantly noticing Jianghu Lai wearing a black over-the-knee coat. His gaze shifted and his eyes fell on the girl walking to his left. Today Bai Lian wore a lotus green coat, a shade of deep green that made her fair skin stand out. Her coat was unbuttoned, revealing a white knitted sweater and cream fleece trousers underneath. A loosely tied cream scarf around her neck had partially slipped off her shoulder, blown by the wind. With her coat on, her hair was casually tied back with a silk ribbon, and she wore a white fleece hat. Standing there, she radiated calmness and composure, exuding an elegance similar to the restraint of Chinese blue and white porcelain with deep blue patterns circling cloud-like layers above. Upon seeing Su Juling and Gao Yan, she smiled softly and greeted them gracefully. Su Juling had long heard about Bai Lian countless times from Gao Yan and Su Nanjing. There was no need to mention Su Nanjing, but Gao Yan's fondness for Bai Lian was almost overflowing. Unable to have more children due to health reasons, Gao Yan greatly yearned for a daughter. Su Jini was the only young miss of her generation in the Su family and had been doted on from a young age. Even her conflicts with Su Jueming did not affect Su Juling and Gao Yan's partiality towards her. However, after Bai Lian appeared, the frequently mentioned Jini in Gao Yan's conversations was replaced by Lian Lian. Su Juling had long wished to meet this girl mentioned so often by Su Nanjing and Gao Yan. Now, seeing her for the first time, he understood why Gao Yan liked her so much. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 754. 298 Shocking Zhixia. What has she done in Xiangqing? First update. _2 in Jiangjing. Apart from university classmates, there are no other social circles, and my position in the one family is quite awkward. Today is the gathering of the young ladies from Jiangjing's elite circles. Both Miss Ming and Miss Su have been very successful in starting their businesses and have attracted many investors. Without someone to lead the way, it's hard for others in Jiangjing to integrate into this circle. 29 Tall Street. Does Wen Zhixia know someone from Tall Street? Thinking this, the driver headed to Tall Street, a road with hardly any private cars with gardens to the rear. Number 29 is a bright and grand gate. Simple and massive, it exudes an imposing aura. The driver parked the car tremulously at the gate, not daring to get out and open the door, merely glancing back. Miss, are you sure this is the place? Wen Zhixia had been playing games up until now, finally taking in the destination. She glanced outside, tapped to the main page and opened WeChat to send a message to Bai Lian. Did you send the wrong address? How did the plum viewing bring us to someone else's home? Just after Wen Zhixia sent the message, when she arrived at the gate, a woman known as Lan's mother approached. Are you Miss Wen? I'm here to take you to Tsufeng Court. Just call me Lan's mother. Lan's mother, who took care of Gao Yan's daily needs, stood with a straight back, conducting herself in a manner not found in common people. The driver from the Wen family hurriedly got out of the car. Having received a reply, Wen Zhixia also got out of the back seat, following Lan's mother with hesitation. The old Su family estate occupies a vast area, with Tsufeng Court located towards the south, at some distance from the main gate. Lan's mother didn't lead Wen Zhixia along the main path. Instead, they skirted around via the gallery bridges. They passed Yuansui Pavilion, quickly reaching Tsufeng Court. Tsufeng Court. Gao Shu had just arrived not long ago and was sitting in the front hall with Jianghu Fulai and Su Nanjing warming up. The indoor heating kept the room warm, and through the lattice windows, one could see the warm pavilion outside. Bai Lian and Gao Yan were sitting on the edge of a serpentine railing, beneath which flowed a stream with fish visible beneath the ice-free water. When Lan's mother brought Wen Zhixia over, Bai Lian had her arm lazily propped up on the railing, holding a box of fish feed. She was the epitome of leisurely contentment. Upon seeing Wen Zhixia, Bai Lian lazily raised her hand in greeting, introducing her to Gao Yan. My friend, Wen Zhixia. Today, Wen Zhixia wore a satin gown with a white fox fur coat draped over it, showcasing a certain ladylike charm. Chapter 755. 298 Shocking Zhixia. What has she done in Xiangqing? First update. _3 As soon as Wen Zhixia heard Su Nanjing, she knew where she was. Su third young master, Su second Mississippi. These two were names Wen Zhixia often heard within the Wen family, and she was as familiar with them as if they had been thundering in her ears. Upon reflection, the only estate that could have such an expansive land in this area, after counting them on her fingers, was the Su family that the old lady often spoke of. The illustrious and prestigious family in Jiangjing which the Wen family and the Yu family both wanted to establish ties with. Wen Jiwei was attending a gathering today that included the Su second Mississippi. This was also one of the reasons why the old Madame Wen wanted Wen Jiwei to bring Wen Zhixia along. But how was Bai Lian connected to the Su family? From the looks of it, she and Su Nanjing seemed to be quite familiar with each other. What had her friend been doing over the past year? Su third young master, I am Wen Jixiao. Despite the shock in her heart, Wen Jixiao formally introduced herself. Tang Ming and Pu Xiaohan were casual to a fault, often addressing Su Nanjing as a brother, while Yang Lin was always one to interact solely with Bai Lian and not bother with anyone else, even when facing Jianghu Lai. This was the first of Bai Lian's friends to address him in such a manner. Upon hearing this, Su Nanjing knew right away that Wen Jixiao was likely someone from the same circles. He chuckled, Miss Wen can just call me Su Third, I am older than you so you may also call me Third Brother. If Bai Lian brought her to the Su family and even personally accompanied her to admire the plum blossoms for an entire morning, Su Nanjing figured, not even Jianghu Lai would receive such treatment from Bai Lian. He led the way in front and listening to Bai Lian speaks to Wen Jixiao in an unhurried tone, thought his mother might be able to achieve her goal through indirect means. Bai Lian was unwilling to become her goddaughter, but perhaps someone else could take that place. The dining venue was in a side hall of Tsufeng Court. Jianghu Lai was casually chatting with Su Juling. He knew Bai Lian wanted to talk to her friend and hadn't disturbed her all morning. Now, when he saw her coming in with Su Nanjing, he reached out to pull back a chair beside him. Bai Lian approached the chair and introduced her, Wen Jixiao, the one I've mentioned to you. She rarely introduced anyone formally. When Director Jian went to Xiangqing, Bai Lian merely gave a casual introduction. Jianghu Lai took a second look at Wen Jixiao and stood up. His cold and distinguished nobility was apparent as he greeted Wen Jixiao with composure, Hello. His voice was cool and somewhat aloof. Chapter 756. The bustling Jiangjing Palladium sent by Mao Kuan, second update, _1 Kangyu Tower, a renowned old brand establishment in Jiangjing. The desserts are limited in supply, and takeout is not allowed, the main draw being their exquisite nature. It's also not easy to make a reservation. Madam Wen had been there a few times and was deeply impressed with the place. Hearing they were Kangyu Tower's desserts, Madam Wen looked down and examined them closely, squinting her eyes. It was difficult to duplicate Kangyu Tower's desserts, especially such realistic sugar fondant plum blossoms. There weren't many in Jiangjing skilled enough to create them. Madam Wen recognized at a glance that these were indeed Kangyu Tower's desserts, and ones only available to VIP guests at that. Her spirits lifted. She observed the desserts brought back to the Wen family home and immediately sat up straight. Go call Xiaohen over. Xiaohen, the driver who had taken Wen Jixiao out today. The Su family. Not long after Wen Jixiao left, Bai Lian also returned. Su Nanjing followed onto the car, going to check on the apartment's renovations. Su Juling said goodbye to them with Gao Yan, waiting until everyone had left. It was then that he spoke to Gao Yan, unable to restrain his admiration. Is Miss Bai really from Xiangqing? Her manner of speaking and her poise really don't seem like it. Her family is from Beijing City. Gao Yan walked beside him towards the gallery bridge and hearing him laughed. She is this year's top scorer in the college entrance examination, even surpassing the one from the Liang family. Su Juling had only just heard of this. Sometimes at dinner parties he had heard a sentence or two about someone smarter than the Liang family, but like most people he hadn't paid much attention. Intelligence was one thing, but whether or not someone could stand before them and reach the summit was a completely different matter. Now hearing Gao Yan's words, he realized that Bai Lian was not the person he had imagined her to be. You know about Shu Shu being elected as dean this time? Gao Yan glanced at Su Juling. Su Juling, often busy with overseas enterprises, was aware of Gao Shu's promotion and had even asked the butler to send a congratulatory gift. The Jiao family is not easy to deal with. Indeed not easy to deal with. Gao Yan walked onto the gallery bridge proud to say, Alien helped her a lot this time. Su Juling was even more surprised. No wonder, he kept pace with Gao Yan. I felt that Jiangjing has been quite lively recently with people from the Dawson family even coming over. My brother and the others have been inquiring about Wang Yufeng, and I wonder if there has been any news from the Qin family. In the car. After responding to Wen Jixiao, Bai Lian reached for her computer. By her side, Jianghu Lai wasn't looking at her messages but was talking to President Huang. I've asked, said President Huang, who normally rested on Sundays and gathered with friends, most of whom were professors in Jiangjing. He stepped aside to answer Jianghu Lai's call. The person who issued the order directly to the institute was General Gao Sun. They wouldn't dare meddle with a big shot like Scholar Ma. But putting pressure on a laboratory center in the physics department of Jiang University was a matter of a few words. Gao Sun. Jiang Fulai opened the desk to make space for Bai Lian's computer. He recalled Gao Sun in his mind. Jiang Fulai didn't care much for the Gao family, but he remembered Gao Sun very well, a cousin of Gao Yi who, due to family connections, had risen quickly at headquarters. Jiang Fulai had a degree of tolerance for the Gao family. But not much, and it was all based on the condition they did not cross a certain line. The proposal you made to the professor to select one person by the end of the year to join his laboratory, that news couldn't possibly be hidden from the Gao family, said President Huang, unsurprised. Little junior sister, you are also aware of her capabilities. Without stirring up some trouble, how would Gao Yuan have a chance? This makes things difficult for Professor Zhou being forced to deliver results prematurely, and at the end of the day it's somewhat related to you. Jiang Fulai tilted his head to look at Bai Lian. Bai Lian had already turned on her computer. She and Ning Xiao hadn't gone to Zhou Wenqing's laboratory today. You sent her an email in the morning. It was about 4 pages of newly captured experimental data. Bai Lian was very skilled at processing this kind of data. Even Zhou Wenqing had been marveling these past few days that a student with Bai Lian's talent might not appear even once in 100 years, and his laboratory was lucky to have stumbled upon her. Jiang Fulai knew that Ning Xiao was working on new materials for purification, and the data on Bai Lian's computer seemed unrelated to plasma. He guessed that it must be research from Zhou Wenqing's laboratory. Bai Lian, no matter what she was doing, always seemed calm and composed. Jiang Fulai wasn't quite sure whether Zhou Wenqing was in any trouble, but seeing Bai Lian's demeanor, he reckoned that Zhou Wenqing and Bai Lian could manage without his concern. The problem he needed to resolve was with the Gao family. Jiang Fulai said to Dean Huang at a leisurely pace, "I understand." Though his tone remained cool and detached, a trace of danger could always be heard in his voice, causing Su Nanjing, who was in the passenger seat, to reach out and rub the goosebumps on her arm. On the other side of the phone, Dean Huang hung up and, judging from Jiang Fulai's tone, chuckled to himself. Upon arriving at Shanghai apartment, Bai Lian returned to the study in room 303 and continued to process the data. Chapter 757, 300 Newcomers on the Cutting Edge. _1 The remaining palladium weighs about 70 Jin. Each piece is the same size with a silver-white metallic surface, and each has the periodic table form etched onto it. At this moment he saw the letters, Pa. He didn't realize which element it was, only looking at the numbers 46, 106, 42 and guessing it to be a metal from the periodic table. They were laid out very neatly. Su Nanjing reached out and took a piece in his hand, playing with it as he read the word etched below. Palladium, guardian deity? The mirror-like reflection made Pu Xiaohan turn her head and squint, recognizing the 2 letters. This is palladium. Palladium? Su Nanjing and Ming Dongheng had special training in high school. From the 1st to the 3rd year, after muddling through, he finally broke free from those studies and dove headfirst into the financial industry in college with Jiang Shijue, keeping away from physics and chemistry. He had long left behind satellite angular velocity periods and these chemical elements in his memory. Under the Su family, multiple industries were covered, the most important being heavy industry involvement with Zhongxing Group, which included several state-level labs, and Su Nanjing had been negotiating material resources with exporters from various countries over the last 2 years. Palladium sounded vaguely familiar in his ears, but not as familiar as uranium. What did Bai Lian want so much metal for? Su Nanjing closed the lid, somewhat puzzled. Ming Dongheng came down from upstairs, placing the fruit Jiheng had asked him to bring on the table. Seeing the paper box that was unwrapped in the middle of the hall, he bent down and deftly moved it outside. Xiaoming, it's a bit heavy. Su Nanjing stood in front of the box, and as he saw Ming Dongheng moving it, he barely got out the letter for heavy. Ming Dongheng then bent down and picked up the paper box as if it were a feather in his hands. He seemed even more effortless than the young man at the front door earlier. Su Nanjing. He was silent for a moment, then took 2 steps back and called for Pu Xiaohan to go upstairs to look at the newly decorated rooms. Influenced by Bai Lian over the past 6 months, Su Nanjing chose a Chinese-style decor. The pure white ceiling of the great hall featured wooden beams, and the mahogany corner flowers were simple and elegant. The restraint and quality of Chinese style were fully highlighted. She turned around in a circle, then turned back to ask Su Nanjing, "Big brother, can I come over next time to get some materials?" "Sure, Xiaohan, come anytime," Su Nanjing said with his hand in his pocket, casually observing the decor. The code is 6666. Everybody called each other what they pleased. After all, it didn't matter much for seniority. The postgraduate entrance exams had ended. Chapter 758, 300 Newcomers Edge. _2 Dean Huang? What are you doing here? The invigilator was somewhat surprised. I came to see the students from the Tongfeng class. Dean Huang had his hands clasped behind his back as he scanned the lecture hall, which was empty. Where is Bai Lian? Bai Lian was a celebrity at Jianghu University. Even teachers from the English department knew that this year's freshman class had produced a Bai Lian, and occasionally they heard the name Ning Xiao as well. After enrollment, less people talked about Liang Wuyu, but mentioned Bai Lian's name, and not just people at Jianghu University, but countless netizens knew her as the prestigious student of Jianghu University. The invigilator naturally knew her, and he pushed his glasses up. Dean Huang, Bai Lian finished her exam and turned in her paper an hour ago. Dean Huang, topology was too difficult, not to mention the fact that Ma Institute fellow personally set the questions. It was normal for Tang Ming and the others to say the questions were too difficult to finish. But, she turned in her paper an hour early? Dean Huang had never seen anyone able to submit Ma Institute Fellows' paper so early, and wondered if it might be a bit too arrogant. Did she finish it? Bai Lian's handwriting was neat and attractive. The invigilator was curious about her, and had a very deep impression of her test paper. He nodded. She did finish. Finished, yes, but he did not know whether the answers were correct or not. Shanghai apartment. Butler Wen carried a gift, following behind Wen Jixia as they got out of the car. Miss, is this the place? He looked at building number 5. When Jixia looked down at her phone, confirmed the address, and since the address Bai Lian gave this time was very normal, she breathed a sigh of relief and led Butler Wen inside. Butler Wen glanced back. What's wrong? When Jixia walked up the steps. Nothing. Butler Wen shook his head, merely thinking that the person who had just been cleaning the trash had a lot of presents. The two of them knocked on the door of room 103. At room 103, the door was opened by Lance, who was holding a white jade chess piece, and greeted Butler Wen, "And I how?" Then he returned to playing chess with Jianghu beside the glass door. Bai Lian had no exams in the afternoon. Since Ji Heng and the others went fishing yesterday, and Ning Xiao and the rest needed to study for finals and didn't have much time, Ji Heng asked Bai Lian to bring Yang Lin back for dinner with them. We're going back on the 29th. When Jixia was going to announce her engagement on the 28th of the lunar calendar, and Bai Lian had arranged with Ji Heng to go back to Xiangqing that evening, will you go back with us or will you go back first? Yang Lin was also busy with her part-time jobs, studies, and also managing the tasks given by Xia Zhuoyu. Chapter 759, 300 Newcomers on the Edge. _3 have some tea. Bai Lian offered the tea to President Huang. Now's the time for tea? President Huang picked up the teacup, took a sip, and found it quite pleasant. He calmed down for a moment. His gaze fleetingly wanted to say something more, but then he caught sight of the girl quietly reading on the sofa. Yang Lin's personal style was quite distinct. She wore black-framed glasses year-round, had bangs that were very long and shoulder-length hair. Just sitting there, she didn't have a strong presence. President Huang was taken aback for a moment, then stood up abruptly with a thump, and exclaimed in surprise, "Yang Lin?" Yang Lin closed her book and stood up. "President Huang? Is it really you?" President Huang's eyes lit up. "I was in your lab just a couple of days ago and didn't see you. Yang Lin, have you given any thought to my suggestion from last time?" Yang Lin glanced at his head and adjusted her glasses. "President Huang, I'm just a freshman. No problem, I can wait." President Huang waved his hand dismissively. "Yang Lin, you must believe that you are definitely better than old Xia." "Yang Lin, I'm going down to help Grandpa." Yang Lin put down her book and went downstairs to room 103. The butler and Wen Jixia also realized that Bai Lian and President Huang had something to discuss, so they both went downstairs as well. Once out the door, the butler asked Wen Jixia, "Who is that President Huang?" "The president?" "Which institute's president?" Wen Jixia glanced back at room 303. She didn't know but felt that this year her friend had truly exceeded her expectations by far. Upstairs. After everyone left, President Huang sat down again to drink tea. "I never expected you to know Yang Lin." These two people, one earmarked by academician Ma, the other favored by old Xia, were both destined to stand at the pinnacle of their fields. Jianghu University had an abundance of talent this year, alright, but how do they all know each other? "We were desk mates in our senior year." Bai Lian refilled President Huang's cup with tea. "Desk mates in their senior year?" From the same class and also from Xiangqing? President Huang was even more amazed. He had heard Xia Zhuyu mention Yang Lin, but only knew that her name was Yang Lin and that she was a student Xia Zhuyu valued. What a coincidence. Xiangqing was really brimming with talent this year. After discussing Yang Lin, President Huang brought up the main issue at hand with a serious expression. I haven't found Professor Zhou. What is he up to these days? Don't you really worry at all? He broke down the situation for Bai Lian, explaining the pros and cons. While President Huang spoke, Bai Lian listened quietly. Only after he finished did she look up. We all know, but I think Professor Zhou doesn't wish to apply for withdrawal himself. Not to withdraw? Chapter 760, 300 New Talents Sharp Edge. _4 However, Song Min does know Bai Shaoqi, and since he was a successful entrepreneur, the physics department had previously secured his sponsorship. They let both of them in without obstruction. Basically, all the professors from the physics department who were on campus had arrived. Dean Huang was sitting in the first row with his notebook in hand. Beside him, familiar people were inquiring Dean Huang about Zhou Wenqing's situation, but Dean Huang didn't speak right away. When Bai Lian and Ning Xiao arrived, the front row seats were already filled with various professors and mentors, and behind them were students brought by other teachers. Hen Shuyan and Su Yuanjun were among them. These two had been ordered by Sun Fu to return home, and this past month hadn't been easy for them, especially since their delay in graduation was a certainty. Now hearing about Zhou Wenqing's incident with Bai Lian, it made things a little more bearable for Hen Shuyan and the others, who, upon spotting Tang Ming, shot a scornful glance in their direction. With Zhou Wenqing's lab gone, it was true no one would take in Bai Lian and the others. Their fate wouldn't be much different. 8 o'clock. Zhou Wenqing still hadn't arrived. Director Lin looked calmly at Dean Huang. Dean, are you sure Professor Zhou will come today? Dean Huang unscrewed the lid of his thermos, took a sip of water and replied composedly, Don't worry, Professor Zhou is still organizing the documents. With Dean Huang's assurance, most people continued to wait. Dr. Zhua and Sun Fu were sitting right behind Dean Huang, feeling relieved as they listened to Director Lin and Dean Huang's conversation. Good thing they had not kept any freshmen in their labs. Because of the Zhou Wenqing incident, both realized someone was targeting this group of newcomers, and Zhou Wenqing was merely caught up in it. 8:05. Director Lin stood up. Dean Huang, I don't think Professor Zhou has produced any results, so he didn't come today. I think there's no need for a meeting to discuss this. Let's just retract the project. As he spoke, the students exchanged glances with each other in confusion. Bai Shaoqi withdrew her gaze from Bai Lian and looked at Song Min. Let's go. The professors on the other hand showed no surprise, for the outcome was inevitable, and they began to stand up, ready to leave. It was at this moment that the front door of the lecture hall was pushed open, and 3 figures entered. Zhou Wenqing had been working hard for several days. He was wearing glasses, casually dressed in a military coat, and had disheveled hair. Still quite composed, he approached the podium, placed his documents down. Sorry for being late, I was guiding them in uploading data to Nature. By his side, Hu Yu bent down, plugged in the USB drive and started the computer. Chapter 761. Jianghu leads the team with a crushing score of 1. Jiang University's graduate and doctoral training programs require published papers as a prerequisite for graduation. These are not only important academic achievements for the students, representing their personal abilities, but also mediums for international academic exchanges, enhancing their academic competitiveness. The project led by Zhou Wenqing wasn't too difficult, but it had a long cycle, and the materials were very difficult to acquire. After April, the experiment had made almost no progress. On stage, Hu Yu broke from her usual leisurely demeanor, introducing their research to all the teachers and students present with great composure. We're continuously optimizing the material properties, increasing the critical temperature and critical magnetic field. Dean Huang sat in the front row, grasping his hands tightly. Finally, he relaxed and his tense body eased upon seeing the research results from Zhou Wenqing's lab. Next to him, however, Dean Lin was extremely puzzled. As the head of the department, he knew better than anyone that Zhou Wenqing's lab was out of experimental materials. He stared intently at the content on the slides, and although everyone present had different research interests, they could understand what Hu Yu was talking about. Nobody left during the 1.5-hour presentation. Zhou Wenqing didn't sit down but stood to one side with his hands behind his back, watching Hu Yu present on the stage, occasionally turning his head to look back at Bai Lian and the other new students. Thank you, teachers and classmates, Hu Yu said after finishing the presentation. The lecture hall quieted for a moment, then the next second, it erupted into warm applause. Before today, the university town's forums had been buzzing with anticipation for this event. Before Hu Yu and Zhou Wenqing's arrival, nobody could have imagined their lab would indeed achieve interim results ahead of schedule. This was also a breakthrough research for Jianghu University's superconductivity project. Dean Huang, looking at Zhou Wenqing and Hu Yu's group, grabbed his coat and spoke with a calm and steady presence. Professor Zhou, I will request to the president that you accompany me to the summit in Ji City. At Ji City's academic summit, Jianghu University's leading participants each year were the deans of various colleges, who would bring outstanding students along. Dean Huang's statement at this moment represented his stance. The position of vice dean of the physics department had been vacant for half a year, and this year they were ready to promote someone to step up. The presidents and deans of Jianghu University don't come out of nowhere. Most are graduates of the university itself. Zhou Wenqing met this criterion, and with Dean Huang's statement, it was virtually decided. Chapter 762, Jianghu leads the team with a crushing score of 2 by Xiaoke. Doctors will placed a pen in his notebook, returning to his senses and inquired of Bai Xiaoke, you said that those new students all come from Xiangqing? Yes, that Bai Lian is my younger half-sister from the same father. Doctors Wu didn't say anything further. He knew that Bai Shuke's information was incorrect. This year's freshmen only Bai Lian and Ning Xiao were well known, even overshadowing Liang Wei's prominence. Last month, before President Huang had asked him, Dr. Zhou had already received news about Bai Lian and her group from Bai Xiaoke. They were from Xiangqing with no significant background, so he initially rejected Bai Lian and the group of new students so decisively. The students nearby were still discussing whether Zhou Wenqing was about to be promoted. Going from a professor to a vice dean, and to the vice dean of Jianghu University School of Physics, at that, would grant him several times more power than he currently had. He would be an entity that Sun Fu and Zhuo Jinhua would have difficulty reaching within 10 years. Sun Fu and Bai Lian's group still had some conflicts, but that was manageable. Zhuo Jinhua, however, was feeling extremely uneasy. Reflecting on it now, when President Huang assigned the new students to him, it must have been because he knew some insider information and had Zhuo's best interests in mind, yet he failed to seize the opportunity. The people around them were all discussing the superconductivity Meissner effect or Zhou Wenqing and the new students. Zhuo Jinhua, however, couldn't continue listening and quickly left with his notebook in hand. Brother. After Zhuo Jinhua had left, Bai Shaoqi and Song Min dared to approach. Bai Shuke's eyes narrowed slightly as he led them towards the exit. Do you still need funding? I still have some here. For the current Bai family, Bai Xiaoke was the hope for elevating their status, and he had always been very generous to Bai Xiaoke. The money was sent efficiently. No need, Bai Shaoqi shook her head. Brother, we too do not need the family's investment. Both were equally proud, desperately trying to prove themselves, especially under the circumstances of Bai Lian's exceptional performance. All right, Bai Xiaoke patted Song Min's shoulder, if you really can't make ends meet, come and find me. Zhou Wenqing's laboratory completed their project ahead of schedule, something most people on the forum didn't anticipate. Besides Sun Fu and Zhuo Jinhua, there was another group that was restless. In the neighboring study room, Wang Shi sat at the very edge looking at posts on the forum. A second author in Nature, their regular grades should be higher than ours, right? Chapter 763, Jianghu leads the team with a crushing score of 3. Xiao Bingwen withdrew his gaze from Zhang Xiai's and Tang Ming, lowering his voice. There's quite a bit of pressure here. Not to mention Bai Lian, just the topic of how fast some small object slid to a distance L that Tang Ming and Zhang Xiai's were discussing. Xiao Bingwen had long since forgotten. Su Nanjing smiled and then stuffed his hands into his pockets, following Xiao Bingwen outside. Xiao Bingwen reached out to open the door to room 303, but as soon as he opened it, he saw Yang Lin outside about to press the doorbell. Yang Lin had just come from school and was still wearing that black long-down coat, with the coat's hood fastened on her head. Yang Lin had a distinct style. Ever since Xiao Bingwen found out that Bai Lian and her group of friends had all been admitted to Jianghu University, he had taken a keen interest in them and naturally recognized her as one of the girls. The one from Xiangqing Hospital before. Hi, young student. Xiao Bingwen was now very polite to the students from Bai Lian's group, as they might be asked to hold honorary positions at their Xiao family's company in another 10 or 8 years. Seeing Xiao Bingwen and Su Nanjing, Yang Lin, her deep eyes hidden behind glasses, gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. It sufficed as a greeting. She stepped aside and entered directly. As usual, cold and silent. Su Nanjing raised an eyebrow. Once outside and the door closed behind him, Xiao Bingwen trailed 2 steps behind Su Nanjing. Now, whenever I see Miss Bei's classmates, I always feel like each of them is extraordinary. That young man with shouting just now, I always feel like he has seen blood. That was Zhang Xiai's, whom Xiao Bingwen had rarely encountered. Probably close enough, he really has done time, said Su Nanjing, knocking on the next door, glancing at Xiao Bingwen. Qi Lu even sentenced him for a year. The door was opened by Ming Dongheng. Young Master and Chief Chen are in the study. Chief Chen is also here? Xiao Bingwen's eyes lit up as he spoke to Su Nanjing. The Chen family seems to have split into 2 new laboratories. If we had that kind of influence, we wouldn't need to ask professors to lend their names everywhere. After his promotion 6 months ago, Chief Chen's influence in Jianghu had grown significantly, and even several senior figures had to give him respect. You're thinking right. Su Nanjing got a response from Jiang Fulai and opened the door to the study. Why don't you ask Brother Jiang or Academician Ma to lend you a name? Xiao Bingwen was about to say more, but as the study door opened, he shut his mouth. He followed Su Nanjing into the room respectfully and stood aside. The piano room and bedroom took up most of the space. The study in room 302 wasn't large. Chapter 764. Jianghu leads the team with a crushing score of 4 included Jiang Fulai. So most people at Jiang University really dare not intervene. The president of Jiang University and others have absolute power in Jiangjing. January 19th. Lunar December 18th, most undergraduates at Jiang University had gone home. The Tongfeng class hadn't officially gone on holiday, and they were gathering in class today. Zhou Wenqing sent a message in the group saying they would gather as usual at 8 o'clock. But today, just before 7, the lecture hall was already packed with people. Unlike other classes, the Tongfeng class would publicly release final grades on the spot, since they were also tied to the places for this year's Boss Winter Talent Camp, and to avoid any doubts, all were announced on the spot. Gao Yuan and Wang Zai's group arrived very early. By the time Bai Lian and her group got there, Gao Yuan and Wang Zai's group were already present. Both groups were the stars of the Tongfeng class this year, and as soon as the doors opened, the eyes of everyone in the Tongfeng class shifted their way. Bai Lian sat down casually next to them. Today she didn't bring her computer or her thesis, just a few papers which she looked at after sitting down, occasionally changing a word or two. Today the rankings and spots for the term were to be announced, and most people, including Gao Yuan, were too excited to stay calm. They glanced at the door from time to time, waiting for Zhou Wenqing to come, with some people quietly complaining that the final exam questions were too hard. Among Gao Yuan's group, Wang Shi was especially nervous. With the classrooms heating on, he had taken off his coat and was just wearing a shirt, with a thin layer of sweat in his palms. He occasionally looked over at Ding Wenyang and his group. After all, he had left Ding Wenyang's group for the sake of a spot at the Winter Talent Camp. This was extremely important for everyone in the Tongfeng class. Damn, I just heard that Gao Yuan's group gets tutored by Dr. Gao on the questions issued by Academician Ma every week. How can we even compare with them? Even Ding Wenyang was affected, turning back uneasily to look at Tang Ming. What do you think we'll score on the finals, especially the continuous assessment? Will Academician Ma give us like 30 points? The Tongfeng class was created by Academician Ma, who was also leading this new batch of students, and the continuous assessment was based on their performance in topology. For Ding Wenyang, Academician Ma was an unreachable height in his lifetime. To get even 30 points out of 100 from him was wishful thinking. Calm down. Tang Ming pulled out his phone, looking completely unruffled. How could Ding Wenyang stay calm? That was Dr. Gao after all. He tilted his head again to look at Ning Xiao next to Tang Ming. Ning Xiao had brought his laptop, revealing only the top half of his face. His eyes, slightly somber, hung low as his fingers ceaselessly tapped the keyboard. Obviously he hadn't heard his comment. Ding Wenyang paused, then turned to look at Bai Lian in the innermost seat. Bai Lian's white bib was laid on the table, dressed in a crimson-colored traditional jacket. Her pale fingers idly pressed down on the paper, as her pen drew a series of musical notes. Even with her unusually bright attire, she still brought out a sense of light elegance. She looked up undisturbed. Her deep-set eyes made Ding Wenyang's restless heart suddenly settle. Around 7:50. Zhou Wenqing entered with a briefcase from outside. Zhou Wenqing looked refreshed after a week's rest, and as the door opened, nearly all eyes in the classroom turned to him. except for Bai Lian and Ning Xiao. Everyone arrived quite early today, smiled Zhou Wenqing as he walked directly to the lectern without beating around the bush. All right, I'll go ahead and announce the rankings to you. He reached out and pulled out a stack of papers from his briefcase. Gao Yuan and the others watched Zhou Wenqing's hands intently, and the two groups at the front turned back and whispered to those next to them, "Hey, it's definitely Gao Yuan's group with continuous assessment accounting for 40%, lab work 20%, and final exams 40%. The voice was very soft. But in the now quiet lecture hall, Gao Yuan and Wang Zai's group all heard it. Wang Shi almost held his breath, staring intently towards Zhou Wenqing. Gao Yuan appeared very calm, assured of his victory. Zhou Wenqing started handing out their assessment notices according to the rankings. Bai Lian 96 points, Ning Xiao 87, Tang Ming 84, Liang Wuyu 83, Su Jiyue, Gao Yuan 78. Tang Ming went up alone and collected all of their scores. Several names were called out before it finally came to Gao Yuan and Wang Zai's turn. Obviously Bai Lian's group, especially Bai Lian herself, scored far higher than Gao Yuan. Bai Lian 96 points? Her continuous assessment must be at least 90, right? Academician Ma gave her such high points? The people in the lecture hall looked at each other in disbelief, some looking at their own score of 20 for continuous assessment, not daring to speak out. Everyone had expected Academician Ma's scores to be low, but the continuous assessment scores for Bai Lian's group seemed excessively high. Sitting in the middle, Gao Yuan's face darkened. He stood up, his gaze falling on Zhou Wenqing's face. In the silence he spoke up, "Mr. Zhou, I know Bai Lian and the others are your students, but isn't it biased to openly protect them like this?" The classroom was left with only the sound of breathing. Zhou Wenqing looked at Gao Yuan seriously, frowning. "Gao Yuan, what do you mean by that?" Chapter 765, 302-0. 9 by Jian Qinglong Bar Incident _1 Topology was inherently difficult and wasn't something they were supposed to encounter at their current stage of learning. But Tongfeng's class was originally composed of students from the national team. Most of them started taking college courses in high school, and Academician Ma's thinking already reached the limits of human intellect, as his research on multidimensional topology had long surpassed ordinary imagination. No one was involved in exactly the same vein of research as Academician Ma, not even President Huang, who was only following a derivative path. The complexity of multidimensional topology was no less challenging than cracking a code on the first try. The problems Academician Ma left them with were not simple point-set topology exercises. Without specialized guidance, a week was not enough for most students in Tongfeng's class to digest a single lecture from him, which is why the gap between those with external assistance and those without was evident. The cousin that Gao Yuan mentioned was someone almost everyone in the room knew. He was the rising star the Gao family had introduced to compete with He Won. With his tutoring, Gao Yuan's group was sure to have higher average grades than the others. Their group usually scored around 60, which was high compared to others' 20 or 40, especially since getting a passing grade from Academician Ma was in itself an affirmation. But Bai Lian's group was somewhat frightening, especially Bai Lian himself with a total score of 96. That meant his regular score was at least 90. Academician Ma giving a freshman a grade of 90? Especially when Zhou Wenqing was the mentor of Bai Lian's group. Gao student, Zhou Wenqing holding his briefcase looked at Gao Yuan, neither humble nor arrogant, very straightforward. "The grades were sent to me by the teachers of various subjects, including the topology regular scores you mentioned. If you have any doubts, you are welcome to report them to the dean, the president, or Academician Ma at any time." Gao Yuan's voice faltered slightly. Indeed, Zhou Wenqing wouldn't dare to do this on his own. After Zhou Wenqing spoke, his gaze turned back to the other students in the class. "Any other questions?" The classroom was very quiet. Zhou Wenqing smiled, "Then that's settled. Everyone can enjoy a brief winter break and we will see each other next year." He left the room. Zhou Wenqing's expression fell. He made a call to President Huang. Bai Lian clipped a few papers together, took a photo and sent it to Dean Jian and Yen Lu. He stood up, grabbed his coat and left. Ning Xiao also reached out to shut down his computer. Ding Wenyang was still seated at his spot, staring at the grade of 70 under the topology column on the list for a good while. Chapter 766, 302-0. 9 by Jian Azure Dragon Bar Incident _2 Until now, the top 10 on the list have always been terrifyingly talented individuals from various fields. There are currently only 3 people with more than 10 million points. When Bai Jian first appeared on the newcomers list, no one in the major domestic laboratories paid attention, but since the summer vacation, this person suddenly appeared on the overall ranking. They climbed from several thousand to several hundred and finally to the top 100. In the end they emerged before everyone ninth. The points were frightening. Everyone was wondering how far this person could eventually climb in the ranking. A character who suddenly emerged out of nowhere, every faction was investigating their backstory. But Gao Yi had almost reviewed the information of all researchers and still couldn't find any relevant data on this Bai Jian researcher, delaying his plans to recruit them. This person's capability is definitely not limited to this. The middle-aged man grasped Gao Yi's implication. I will continue to check the overseas laboratories. If they couldn't find anything domestically, they imagined that the person should be in a laboratory abroad. Gao Yi's phone rang. It was Gao Yuan. Afternoon at Xijing Club. In a private room. Liu Yuzhang took a phone call, then turned to the girl in front of him, wearing a beige cheongsam and looking exceptionally gentle, stood up and shook her hand. Okay then Miss Wen, we'll see each other on the 28th. They were as distant as if the other person was a partner or collaborator. Goodbye. Wen Zhixia also stood up and politely shook hands with Liu Yuzhang. Both from equal social standings, they had only met 3 times but were already bound together. Liu Yuzhang left the room, his female secretary waiting outside, handing over his suit jacket, then smiled politely at Wen Zhixia coming out from behind. Miss Wen. Everyone knew that Wen Zhixia was about to become the wife of the elder son of the Yu family. The secretary treated Wen Zhixia with considerable politeness. As Liu Yuzhang stepped away, the female secretary followed. President Liu, Mina is trying her best to contact Wang Xen. But at the moment the other party only has one endorsement brand, Solid Foundation Paste, and the chances of us securing a deal are not great. The two of them were close to each other. When Zhixia felt nothing, only waiting for the person to enter the elevator before she leaned somewhat ungracefully against the wall and pressed her phone, ordering, "Bring my shoes up." She rarely wore high heels and today's were rubbing a bit. When the one family driver brought the shoes up, she switched to sneakers and casually picked up a black coat to drape over herself. As she walked, she tapped her phone, sending a message to Bai Lian. Chapter 767, 302-0. 9 Bai Jian Azure Dragon Bar Incident _3 Dean Jian nodded at her and continued speaking to Bai Lian about old Master Chen. He really appreciates you. Bai Lian pressed the elevator button and hearing this, merely offered a proper smile. Then thank you. Ding, the elevator arrived. Bai Lian got in and politely bid farewell to Dean Jian. As the elevator doors slowly closed, Dean Jian could still see her radiant face. She had changed to a new hairpin today, a light purple jade one, her pair of black eyes like layers of mist, inscrutable. Even when hearing about the Chen family, a family as distinguished as a feast accompanied by the tolling of bells, she remained composed and unconcerned, and Dean Jian practically never saw any other expression on her. He really had no idea what Bai Lian wanted. Once the elevator doors had shut, Leng Shuhe finally dared to speak. Teacher, did Miss Yen Lu come today? She's recording a song, what about it? Dean Jian walked leisurely toward the recording studio, unable to help his old friend with the busy schedule. My friend wants to discuss a few cooperation matters with Miss Yen Lu. Leng Shuhe followed Dean Jian. Does she have any time, teacher? You can ask her when she comes out, Dean Jian replied casually. Leng Shuhe murmured affirmatively, his gaze lingering curiously at the elevator entrance. When Zhixia had learned to drive during the summer break, she drove her car near Jiangyin waiting for Bai Lian. After notifying Ming Dongheng, Bai Lian looked for Wen Zixia's car. When she arrived, Wen Zhixia was leaning against the car door, dressed in a black coat and wearing a pair of sneakers, looking cool as she lazily stood in the brisk sunshine, scrolling through social media. Damn, is she finally releasing a new song? Bai Lian happened to overhear this remark. She approached quietly and handed a cup of hot milk tea she had just bought for Wen Zhixia. Why have you come to Jiangyin? Wen Zhixia, who planned to take Bai Lian out for drinks, sipped the milk tea and got into the driver's seat, heading with Bai Lian to the Azure Dragon Bar. Just to take a look, Bai Lian buckled her seat belt. When Zhixia nodded, glancing from the corner of her eye at the familiar black car behind them. It was Ming Dongheng's car trailing from a distance. She withdrew her gaze from the rearview mirror, momentarily forgetting about Jiangyin. She did ask Bai Lian how she knew Jiang Fulai the other day, but still had no clue about whom the other person was. When Zixia's roots in Jiangjing were shallow, and there was much she didn't understand. The one family had mentioned Su Sanshao multiple times, but she had never heard them mention the name Jianghu. Of course, Wen Jixia was not foolish enough to question the old Madame Wen or the butler. She wouldn't reveal too much about Bai Lian's matters. For now, when they go to the bar they are always followed by a dedicated car, yet the Wen family had never assigned a bodyguard to stay close and protect Wen Jixia. Wen Jixia found this somewhat surprising. At this time the Azure Dragon bar had just opened. It was the same reserved booth as before. This time Wen Jixia was much calmer than last time. She did not drink much and talked to Bai Lian about her impressive achievements at school. She even mentioned Liu Zhang. He's known Ming Zongyao for more than a decade, childhood sweethearts. I've met Miss Ming too, a very gentle and elegant lady, a notable figure in Jianghu University's financial circles, very popular among the socialites. This was also one of the reasons why Wen Jixia was not well received in certain circles. But an arranged marriage concerns two families. Liu Zhang, who has always prioritized power, cut ties with the Ming family very cleanly. 7 in the evening. A black sedan stopped outside the Azure Dragon bar. Ming Dongheng stood silently at the entrance, watching the noble figure alight from the driver's seat, not daring to speak. Jianghu was dressed in a minimalist coat, looking up at the bar, his eyes always light, his presence dignified and distinguished even in such a place. The Azure Dragon bar was never a spot for ordinary consumer spending, frequented by the elite of Jiangjing. The staff were accustomed to power and influence. Yet at the sight of Jianghu, no one dared to step forward to lead the way. Ming Dongheng stepped forward and honestly led the way for Jianghu. In the bar, square lights flickered, smoke and the scent of alcohol mingled, creating an enveloping haze. The music from several stages in the center was deafening, in what was clearly a chaotic and noisy place. As Jianghu passed by, it was as though a mute button had been pressed. The lighting inside the bar was already dim, but even with his eyes lowered, one could feel an undeniable presence emanating from him. Mr. Xiaoqi. Far away the waiter had already gone inside to report to Xiaoqi. Jianghu's demeanor didn't seem like that of someone who had come to simply wander through a bar. It's fine. Xiaoqi glanced over, recognized him at once and waved his hand to let them be. No need to wait on him. The booth. 2 young men were sitting beside Wen Jixia pouring her drinks. Just as Jianghu arrived, the young man on the left side of Wen Jixia noticed Bai Lian's drink was finished, glanced at Bai Lian and reached out to pour her another glass. Bai Lian was unlike the other patrons of the bar. Not to mention the clothing and jewelry on both her and Wen Jixia, which were recognizable as bespoke, just the sheer force of Bai Lian's presence was far beyond any socialite or second-generation rich person they had ever encountered. Thank you, Bai Lian said lazily, picking up the glass. Her slender fingers tapped the glass nonchalantly as she spoke. Just pour for her. She politely declined. Wen Jixia wasn't as drunk today, just a bit dizzy. She smiled, about to speak, when suddenly she felt the atmosphere around her inexplicably turn cold. Bai Lian also felt it and turned around to see Jianghu, her lazy and beautiful face revealing a slight smile. Why did you come over? Wen Jixia shuddered, suddenly becoming sober. She stood up somewhat reservedly. Jianghu sat down beside Bai Lian with his usual expression, glanced at Wen Jixia and said calmly, I'm just passing by, don't mind me, continue drinking. Wen Jixia sat down, suddenly feeling a bit hesitant to drink. The 2 young men beside her didn't dare to lift their heads either. In front of the table full of handsome men and beautiful women, especially Bai Lian and Jianghu, even the best-looking patrons of Qinglong Bar seemed pale in comparison. Jianghu slowly rolled up his sleeves and unhurriedly picked up an unopened bottle of liquor from the table, pouring a small glass of brown liquid for Bai Lian. Bai Lian paused for a moment. I've stopped drinking. Jianghu placed the glass down and glanced over it, lowering his gaze. Then it must be because my pouring skills are poor. Bai Lian, the last time they met, Jianghu had been quite gentle with Wen Jixia. It was only now that Wen Jixia truly felt the oppressive aura of the young Mr. Jiang. She rose to her feet. I have to rush back for a meeting, silly. Let's meet another time. She went to the bar to settle the bill, but was informed that Jianghu had already paid it. Miss Wen, Ming Dongheng appeared like a ghost, courteous and polite. I will escort you back. When Jixia got into Ming Dongheng's car, finally coming back to her senses, she answered a call from the Wen family butler. Miss, it's 7 o'clock, how come you haven't returned? On the way, when Jixia sat in the back seat, cracked open the window to clear her head. He'll be home soon. Drive slowly, the butler advised upon hearing the sound of the wind, before sharing some gossip with Wen Jixia. The second master is also here, and Jiwei mentioned she saw Yen Lu at this afternoon's gathering. She is trying to work out a deal with Yen Lu's management agency. Having a brand spokesperson is very important, and clearly this year in the entertainment circle, no one is hotter than Yen Lu. She's not just a performing artist and singer now, but also the official representative of Xiangqing and is highly promoted by the Jiangjing Music Academy. After Blossoms on the Tree became a hit, Yen Lu's status in the industry shot up significantly, thanks to Bai Jian. After all, everyone knows the theme song was written by Bai Jian for the theater's director. One can imagine the director's standing. The commercial value of Yen Lu cannot be underestimated in the future. Chapter 768. 303 members joined, shocking friend circles in all directions. _ One Yunshao district is different from the carved beams and painted rafters of Shermen district, the lively and human touch of the university town in Chang'an district, and the low-profile simplicity of Xinjiang district. As an economic center, it has always been luxurious. Neon lights dazzle in splendor. Jianghu Lai stood by a nearby street sign, his gaze lazily falling into the distance where Bai Lian was talking with Xiaoqi. Her unbound hair fluttered in the wind and the skirt she was wearing swayed gently. Her eyes and brows were hazily covered by the roadside lanterns, exuding a unique Chinese charm. Behind her was the cold-colored glimmer of lights. Uniquely blessed. I won't make an appearance, Bai Lian discussed with Xiaoqi about the end-of-year business alliance event. You and Dr. Lu can host it. I've reviewed Sun Chun's year-end welfare plan. It's very good. The focus is to promote the planting of herbal medicines in Xiangqing. Having been open for over a year now, after the acupuncture for myopia, some bloggers began to see initial results. With Xiaoqi's marketing genius, Xian Kang has formally become the go-to choice for netizens seeking myopia treatment within the country. Xian Kang's popularity naturally led to others following suit. Xian Kang did not work in isolation but welcomed teachers from any pharmacy to learn the acupuncture for myopia technique, a move that earned them a lot of praise. In the first half of the year, the internet was all about Yen Lu and Dayong. In the second half, most of the topics revolved around Xian Kang and Bai Lian, and the Xiangqing Calligraphy Association also enjoyed some of the attention. Netizens knew that Xian Kang and Xingyi Martial Arts School were from Xiangqing, but they were unaware of Bai Lian's connection with Xian Kang. Xiaoqi was aware that Bai Lian was unlikely to attend the event. In fact, at various conferences, Dr. Lu usually represented Xiaoqi. Despite having earned his own money since junior high and possessing a mature aura, he was not fully trusted by the bosses and business partners due to his young age. Chairman Liao from the Jiangjing Business Association has been eagerly inviting us to join the association. Xiaoqi brought up another matter to Bai Lian. He would like to invite you to the end-of-year business alliance banquet. Xian Kang's success in countering old brands like the Luo family and breaking into first-tier cities has garnered the attention of major business alliances. Those in the industry know that Xian Kang must have political connections. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible for them to obtain insight into the top-level policy decisions so early on. Xian Kang has already become a target for various business alliances. Chapter 769. 303 joins the club, shocking friends from all directions. Tushi was looking at the new guzheng placed in the middle. When did you buy it? Without turning her head, she knew he had come out. Jianghu Lai knew she didn't like to blow-dry her hair, so he went to the bathroom, fetched the hairdryer, and had her sit on the sofa to help her dry her hair. A couple of days ago, I saw they were about to transport it to the exhibition and had someone intercept it. It was a guzheng that hadn't even made it to the exhibition yet. Bai Lian was lying on the sofa sideways, and by now she no longer asked Jianghu Lai how much he spent on this zither. She was only thinking about whether Dean Jian knew about this zither and whether she should invite him to see it at home. Midway through the blow-drying, Zhou Wenqing's phone call came through. He said something but Bai Lian couldn't hear it clearly, so she just tilted her head back. Turn it off first. Jianghu Lai stretched out his hand to turn off the hairdryer. Zhou Wenqing didn't know who she was talking to and felt a slight chill on his skin, his voice tinged with concern. I heard someone approach the president earlier. It was still about that spot. Zhou Wenqing was about to become deputy dean, and most of the movements within the department could reach him. It's nothing. Bai Lian didn't care about the matter at all. It was only after she finished the call that Jianghu Lai asked her what had happened. Bai Lian briefly explained. Yet, young Master Jiang's attention was elsewhere. He turned the hairdryer back on and snickered, 90 points? It usually gives you only 90? Bai Lian, that's quite high. Everyone else got only 20 or 40 points. Jianghu Lai certainly didn't think it was high, and after finishing blow-drying her hair, he specifically went back to the study to grab his phone and sent out a message. Missing these 10 points to come home for the new year? This somewhat subdued smile made none of the Zhongxing executives, who were in a meeting, dare to speak. Outside. Ming Dongheng wouldn't dare to enter room 302 at this time. He was in room 303 helping Jianghu tidy up the Lego on the carpet, waiting for Bai Lian to come out before discussing Wuxia's matter with her. A spokesperson? Bai Lian pondered for a moment. Everyone was busy at the end of the year. Yanlu was attending various ceremonies and receptions, and she was also preparing to release a new song. Though Ming Dongheng was taking on the responsibility of a head bodyguard as a member of the Ming family, he understood a bit. These enterprises that are being marginalized are now much less well known than before. They are all looking for new avenues, and Miss Wen's family business probably wants to make a breakthrough in this regard. Chapter 770, 303 joins the club, shocking friends from all directions under 3, but, compared to the person in front of him, he still fell short by quite a bit. It's the merit of Xiaoqi and Dr. Liu. Bai Lian raised her glass, always reserved in expression, and replied with neither servility nor overbearance. Xiaoqi's marketing strategies have been borrowed by countless others. This kind of three-shop marketing strategy, plus a lawyer in the background whose identity was unknown, made most companies hesitate to make a move. After all, everyone in business knows how terrifying a top legal team can be. Even a top 100 global company like the Luo family rode the wave of this hype, so who else would dare to make a move? After the meal, Bai Lian agreed to join the Jianghu Commerce Association. Liao Guangshuan personally escorted Bai Lian to the car. Miss Bai, I will deliver your Commerce Association VIP card to you once it's ready. Thank you. The car was still driven by Ming Dongheng. After Bai Lian got into the car, Liao Guangshuan's secretary finally spoke. Miss Bai is really lucky. He was referring to Xiaoqi and Lu Jiwei underneath Bai Lian. Lucky. Liao Guangshuan glanced at the secretary, to gather several management members of Shen Kong together and make them follow orders dutifully. Do you think that's just her luck? This kind of governance, some old-timers in the business association might not be able to use as skillfully as Bai Lian's side. The two walked back. Inside the business association, a manager led a group of people out. Seeing Liao Guangshuan, the manager hurried to greet him. President Liao, then continued to introduce, President Liao, these are the outstanding participants of the campus entrepreneurship competition. Our department specifically invited them to come for training at the business association. This is Song Min. Upon hearing that this was the president of the Jianghu Commerce Association, the group of entrepreneurial university students was very excited, including Song Min and Bai Xiaoqi who walked at the front. President Liao had just met Bai Lian, who even in his presence, was elegantly natural and composed. Comparing her with these young people who couldn't conceal their ambition made for a stark contrast. He smiled and offered a few words of encouragement. After he left, the group of students burst into excited chatter. That was President Liao. Bai Xiaoqi couldn't contain herself and whispered to Song Min, I wonder if he remembered your name just now. For them, President Liao was a significant figure in the industry. Bai Qiming couldn't sit at the same table with him to dine even if he tried for another 20 years. The 27th day of the lunar calendar. There was only one day left until Wuxia's engagement. Chapter 771, 303 joins the club, shocking friends from all directions _4 Uncle Wen also turned his attention to the grandmother. This is my childhood friend, Bai Lian. Wen Jixia glanced at Wen Jiwei. Wen Jiwei took a closer look at Bai Lian, felt that the name sounded somewhat familiar, but did not give it much thought, as when Jixia grew up in Beijing, a childhood friend would also be from Beijing. Jianghu had not heard much of the Bai family. She tilted her head to continue speaking with Lai Chen, not paying attention to Bai Lian. Today many guests arrived early at the Wen family, and they would be uniformly arranged nearby later. As one of the main figures of the event, Wen Jixia was supposed to host the guests together with the grandmother and Uncle Wen, but in practice Bai Lian had been standing with her in the living room for half an hour while most of the high-status management personnel were received by the grandmother and Uncle Wen. Most of the younger people were talking to Wen Jiwei and Lai Chen. I heard you concluded a deal with Miss Ming last time? Deal is an overstatement, but you know Ming family has recently collaborated with Zhongxing, right? I just tried to invest a bit of capital, I can't compare with them, Wen Jiwei modestly said. It's my cousin who is really amazing. He recently connected with the manager of Little Grape Private Equity. Little Grape Private Equity in just 6 months had become the leading private equity in the Jianghu area. It seems that each person behind the management team had significant backgrounds. Jiwei, do you know the inside story? Will the people from Jianghu's Business Alliance also come tomorrow? The One family and Yu family were also members of Jianghu's Business Alliance, and it was certain that members would attend the engagement. Yes, said Wen Jiwei, my uncle even invited Chairman Liao, though I don't know if he will grace the event with his presence. There were various receptions at the end of the year, and at such times, it's not easy for them to invite Chairman Liao. A group of people gathered and chatted excitedly. When Wuxia was used to being marginalized by these people, occasionally she would join the conversation with Uncle Wen about business, but mostly she turned her head and talked to Bai Lian. She passed Bai Lian a stack of exquisite pastries. They're not as sophisticated as what you're used to eating, my family's chefs are going to be annoyed to death by me. She had discovered last time that Bai Lian liked these delicacies, so the Su family brought her a box. Bai Lian's visit had been in Wen Zixia's preparation plans for a while. Bai Lian sat beside Wen Zixia, stretching out her hand to pick up a plum blossom-shaped crystal pastry. It's delicious. She lowered her eyes and ate 2 pieces methodically. Chapter 772, 304 Zixia. This is Chairman Liao _1 in the past year. Quite a few people have added Bai Lian. Among the people the original owner added, aside from Ji Mulan, she basically didn't delete anyone. Later on, she added a group of people from Xiangqing, followed by the head of the institution and others, and after coming to Jiangjing she added Gao Shu, Gao Yin, and her classmates from Jianghu University. Her WeChat moments gathered a constellation of talent. But basically, everyone who was added later knew that Miss Bai didn't like to go online, spending her days either reading books or visiting the Book Association Martial Arts Hall, and in her spare time she looked after cabbages or played Go with Jianghe. This was the first time she posted on her moments. Seeing her post on moments for the first time, most people were quite surprised to click and take a look. Especially Class 15 who had added Bai Lian for over a year and now seeing her post on moments, directly took a screenshot and sent it to the class group. Wang Qi. Screenshot, Wang Qi. It's amazing, Sister Lian actually knows about this feature in moments. Zhang Xiai's replied to Bebe, at Bai Lian. Wang Qi has recalled a message. They were just joining in the fun, but some people seriously looked at the picture. The invitation on the picture had the time and place clearly written. On the other side, Chairman Liao was at the Hot Spring Villa, accompanying Dean Feng in hosting professors from the finance department as well as several politicians. Does Shen Kong have ties with her? Dean Feng's expression betrayed his surprise. As the dean of the finance department, Dean Feng's network was quite formidable. The solid foundation paste from behind Shen Kong had overpoweringly potent effects. He knew better than anyone where it was used, exclusive to the Special Forces medical supplies, signed under an official contract. In fact, one only needed to look at the packaging of solid foundation paste to know. Many drug names were not disclosed, belonging to second-level confidential prescriptions. This was also one of the reasons why the Luo family couldn't beat Shen Kong. The product now being sold to the public was diluted by several times. Backed by official support, prescription confidentiality. Therefore, Dean Feng suggested that Liao Guangshuan personally invite Shen Kong, this yet-to-be-listed company, to join the Jianghu Business Alliance. The Luo family's cooperation with our country, and the domestic leading traditional Chinese medicine industry did indeed need a change. Now it seemed that Shen Kong was indeed thriving, offering a new path for traditional Chinese medicine in the country. This was because the nearsightedness acupuncture treatment, after being verified by netizens over 2 to 3 months, really showed remarkable effects, leading more and more people to believe in traditional Chinese medicine. I didn't expect it either, said Liao Guangshuan, sitting on the Kong bed, picking up the hot teapot in the middle and pouring tea for Dean Feng. She doesn't understand the industry, but she speaks with a commanding presence, never appearing in public, which is odd. Shen Kong had been hot for so long, yet its public managers were merely 2 doctors, one surnamed Lu, the other He. If netizens knew who was behind Shen Kong, Bai Lian with her influence in Jianghu University, and her popularity online, Shen Kang's fame would surge yet again. After all, she is from the Mu family. Dean Feng, who knew about a former incident involving the Mu family, said, the Mu family patriarch was also a towering figure when he was young, although he wasn't as conspicuous then. Shen Kong is just icing on the cake for her. Her main arena isn't the business world. According to old Huang, this Miss Bai is no simple character. He looked serious. The finance and physics departments have been close due to Jiang Fulai and Jiang Shijue, often holding joint events. Dean Feng and Dean Huang were old friends, having dined together just the other day. He had overheard Dean Huang slip and call Bai Lian Jr. sister. Who is Dean Huang's teacher? If he called Bai Lian Jr. sister, that meant she was extraordinary, the disciple of the sect leader of the #1 academic school in the country, with the previous 3 senior brothers all being industry titans. Sitting aside, Liao Guangshuan once again heard shocking insider information. He began to think about his attitude toward Bai Lian during their previous meetings. When he went back to his room, he inadvertently saw Bai Lian's Moments post, with a long list of likes from mutual friends below. Liao Guangshuan fixed his gaze on it for a moment. Su-en Dean Huang, the third young master Su, a plethora of people's likes. He quickly clicked like 2, then clicked on the picture to take a closer look. He didn't remember the invitation, but he knew of the Wen and Yu families, both being business alliance members, and called his assistant to inquire if they had received an invitation. Learning that they had, he began to consider. At the end of the year, he was to entertain several leaders with Dean Feng. Now, Liao Guangshuan couldn't make up his mind and went to ask Dean Feng. "Go ahead," said Dean Feng after some thought, offering his advice. "It wasn't easy for old Huang to find her last time, and your chances of seeing her afterward might not be many. He might as well take this opportunity, as it would be difficult to see her again in the future." At the Wen family, Bai Lian had been in the greenhouse since the afternoon, opening her laptop to work on data. Chapter 773, 304 Jixia. This is Chairman Liao _2. Her computer was filled with charts of reds and greens. Both glanced at each other's computer screens and neither knew what the other was up to, so they silently turned their gazes back to their own tasks. The One family butler came over a few times to replace their tea with warm water, and he could understand a bit of what was on Wenxixia's computer. It was a K-line chart. Bai Lian's had all sorts of charts and a pile of spreadsheets, and sometimes dynamic models would pop up. No idea what she was doing. Is this what young people are into these days? The butler, puzzled, returned to the living room to assist the old lady with hosting guests. After she finished a chart, Bai Lian slightly raised her hand and lazily picked up the teacup beside her. While chatting with Wenjixia, it seemed casual. "School just started, you seemed quite reluctant about the engagement when you met me?" She had also looked into the Wen and Yu families. All it would take was a word from Wenjixia, and she could make both the Wen and Yu families take a step back, but Wenjixia did not bring it up again. Marrying anyone is still marriage. With no one in the flower room, Wenxixia's ambition was clear. She leaned back in her chair, her hand resting on the armrest. "The Yu family is the best blade, and both Liu Zhang and I know each other's purpose." The Yu family valued her as an individual, and she valued the Yu family's power. Both were very clear-headed. Bai Lian looked into Wenxixia's eyes and nodded slightly. "Good." That evening, Bai Lian stayed next to Wenxixia's room. After her bath, she continued with the afternoon's work and then spent an hour discussing details with Ning Xiao via voice call. After the voice call, she closed the design software and returned to her WeChat page, only to see that Jiang Fulai had sent her a link half an hour ago, which was then interrupted. She powered off the computer and then turned on her phone. On her phone, she revisited the same interrupted link and redialed it. "I was just comparing data with Ning Xiao." As soon as the video call connected, Bai Lian found a spot to place her phone, then reached out to tidy up the computer and notebook on the desk, putting them into the canvas bag next to her, while she explained to Jiang Fulai. On the other end, Jiang Fulai was in room 103, deftly playing with a black ghost stone. He was too lazy to continue playing chess with Jiang He opposite him, leisurely placing the stone to block the opponent's path and then taking his phone out to the glass room. Jiang He on the other side. In the video, Bai Lian wore the home clothes provided by the Wen family, a silk long-sleeved shirt, her hair still half wet. Her long hair hung loosely in front of her chest. Chapter 774, 304 Jixia. This is Chairman Liao _3 Wenjixia. How do you have his WeChat? Added in Xiangqing. They were filming there before. Do you want me to send it to you later? Ah. Wenjixia was startled for a moment. "No need, I just like the characters he and Yen Lu play, especially Yen Lu." It was only after Wenjixia left that Bai Lian closed the door and quietly picked up her phone. On the other side of the phone, Jiang Fulai was still standing in the courtyard with a glass roof, his hand nonchalantly in his pocket, quietly waiting for them to finish. His eyelashes were lowered, his voice quite indifferent. The bar sister from that day? Since that time, when Wuxia's only image in Jianghu Lai's mind was associated with the bar. Jianghu Lai didn't comment much about the bar, but as for Wen Zhixia finding two handsome men to pour drinks, Mr. Jiang had some reservations. It was rare for him to be impolite. From Miss Wen to bar sister. By Lian, the following day, Wen Zhixia got engaged. Early in the morning, the stylist was preparing Wen Zixia's gown. Wen Zhixia wore a gradient mermaid dress with pearl straps. The tail was embellished with sparkling diamonds. As the two families were getting engaged, Bai Lian had not seen Liu Zhang either. In the morning, in a manor not far from the Wen families. The large banquet hall was laid with gray carpets, and the stage in the center was covered with fresh flowers. Servers holding trays of drinks shuttled under luxurious crystal lights. When Bai Lian and Wen Zhixia arrived, there were already quite a few people gathered in groups, murmuring over glasses of wine. There were also pairs and trios greeting each other with drinks in hand. In such an event, some people wished to come but didn't receive an invitation, while others couldn't be bothered to attend despite having one. Wen Zhixia, in her pearl-studded fishtail dress and a crystal tiara, wore the bright and dazzling style of a princess. Bai Lian was dressed in a simple long white gown today, a subdued color. It wasn't a show-stealing ensemble, but her unique classical temperament did not pale next to Wen Zhixia. It was not without reason that the Yu family was interested in Wen Zhixia. Bai Lian, by Wen Zixia's side, soon caught the attention of many. Who is that? By Lai Chen's side, a returning student classmate holding a glass of wine set eyes on Bai Lian. Lai Chen had already learned of Bai Lian's identity from the Wen family, and casually said, "According to Ji Wei, she's Wen Zixia's classmate in Beijing. She came here especially for Wen Zixia's engagement party." Having come this far for Wen Zixia's engagement, he felt he had grasped Bai Lian's intentions. A classmate from Beijing? Lai Chen's classmate looked in Bai Lian's direction with a keen interest. Then there's no need for special greetings. Chapter 775, 304 Zhixia. This is Chairman Liao for the ceremony was about to begin when Lai Chen and a few others, holding their wine glasses, came over and raised a toast to Bai Lian and Wen Zhixia, who were a few steps away. Then he spoke in a low voice to Liu Zhang, "You've made a poor move this time. Just look at your fiancé over there, TSK. It seems like there are more people in the circle standing with Miss Ming and Miss Su. It's not popularity that I want." Liu Zhang straightened his collar. What he valued was Wen Zixia's ability to orchestrate business. Lai Chen shrugged and commented on Wen Zhixia, a sheltered lady who rarely steps out of her door. How utterly boring. The group was in the middle of their conversation. Suddenly, the Wen family matriarch, Uncle Wen, and the parents from the Yu family, together with several important business partners, all headed towards the entrance. This movement caught the attention of most guests. Lai Chen was startled, then turned to Liu Zhang. "Who else is expected to arrive today?" Liu Zhang had no idea. His gaze swept the area. All of the main business partners of the Yu family and Wen family were there, hosted by his parents and Uncle Wen. Their younger generation was all gathered in this spot. Aside from them, when Ji Wei and her group were also guessing, "Ji Wei, who has arrived?" "I don't know either." When Ji Wei stood up and walked a few steps to the side, following Liu Zhang and the others. In the hall, several big shots stood up to greet the guest, prompting others who sat on the sofas to naturally rise. Only Wen Zhixia and Bai Lian didn't move. Wen Zhixia, aware she did not know those people and too lazy to bother, even went to get some desserts for Bai Lian. "Try this, do you like it?" At the entrance, a middle-aged man appeared at a leisurely pace. Uncle Wen and President Yu went straight up to welcome him, quite surprised. "President Liao, we didn't expect you to come." Everyone knew that President Liao was to meet with governmental officials at the end of the year, and nobody thought he would show up at an engagement party. "President Liao is here?" Lai Chen and those around him looked at each other, puzzled. Liu Zhang, realizing who it was, readjusted his suit and walked forward. When Ji Wei and the others felt some excitement. "Ji Wei, is that President Liao? He's actually come?" The arrival of President Liao caught most people off guard. The crowd quickly surrounded him, and both acquaintances and strangers alike wanted to get noticed by President Liao. As the leader of the largest business league and a student of President Feng, who is the chairman of the business association, President Liao's connections and resources were unmatched in Jianghu. Even Liu Zhang went to get acquainted with President Liao. It was a rare opportunity. Chapter 776. 305 Gao Yan's arrival _1 Liao Guangshuan had checked why Bai Lian would be here before arriving. Although Wen Zhixia was about the same age as Bai Lian, Liao Guangshuan did not take her lightly at all. He slightly raised his glass and smiled at Wen Zhixia, very polite. "Miss Wen, hello." Wen Zhixia was still holding a glass of wine in her hand. Her entire body was somewhat stiff. After all, this Liao Guangshuan was the person Wen Jiwei and the others had mentioned many times in the past 2 days. Though it was hard to believe, she reacted very quickly and calmly introduced herself to President Liao. President Liao smiled, took a sip of wine and then placed the glass on the tray. Exchanging contact information with Wen Zhixia, he spoke to Bai Lian. "I was at Hot Spring Villa with teacher yesterday, and I wanted to invite you as well, but Mr. Su said you were not available." Bai Lian indeed did not have much free time. After chatting for a few sentences, Liao Guangshuan personally handed the business card of the Merchant Guild to Bai Lian. "This is your card, it will be accepted at airports nationwide and 5-star hotels from now on." As the largest business chamber in Jianghu, it naturally had special treatments. The guild's membership card granted access to VIP lounges at all airports and special services at major hotels. "Thank you." Bai Lian also put down her glass and reached out to take the card, a very noticeable black diamond card. Bai Lian chatted casually with Liao Guangshuan. Their voices were not loud during the conversation. But at that moment, almost all eyes were focused on their corner. The entire banquet hall's attention was on them. The people around them all heard Liao Guangshuan say, "Miss Bai," and "Miss Wen." At this side, the Yu family members exchanged glances. "Yu Zhang, does Zhixia really know President Liao?" "I'd say it's her friend who knows President Liao." Li Yuzhang's gaze shifted from President Liao to Bai Lian by his side. The status of Liao Guangshuan went without saying. His sudden arrival caught most of the people in the hall unprepared. The Yu family and Wen family were somewhat panicked, afraid of not having provided adequate hospitality. But judging by Wen Zixia's reaction just now, it wasn't hard to guess who had caused Liao Guangshuan to come over. "Her friend, I remember, has the surname Bai, right?" General Yu found it unbelievable. He hadn't heard much about the surname Bai. He didn't even know the name of Miss Bai. How could she have suddenly stirred President Liao? After a moment of silence, Li Yuzhang picked up his glass and went to find Wen Zhixia. His action made the others react, and one by one, they went to greet Liao Guangshuan and Wen Zhixia. "Zhixia, do you not recognize me? I'm your auntie by marriage." For a time, all sorts of aunties, uncles, cousins came over to get close to Wen Zhixia. Anyone who could say a word came over. "Cousin," Lai Chen realized the situation was somewhat off, quite anxious. "How do they know President Liao?" Next to him, a group of young masters and misses from the circle also looked towards Wen Jiwei, hoping for an explanation. The Lai family had always been supportive of Wen Jiwei. This time Wen Zixia's engagement with the Yu family made Wen Jiwei and Lai Chen naturally lean towards Ming Zongyao and Su Jini. Wen Jiwei's thoughts were also in disarray. After Wen Zixia's return, the old lady gave her 10% of the shares, naturally making the rest of the Wen family feel threatened. People in the circle all knew each other, driven by interests, resulting in Wen Zhixia having no friends within the circle after returning for more than half a year. The Yu family's choice of Wen Zhixia was unexpected to everyone, but this choice had made those who were still indecisive decide in an instant that the Wen family would definitely have a falling out with the misses of the Ming family. Today was Wen Zhixia and Li Yuzhang's engagement party, and some people came with the intent to watch the excitement. Who could have known? In their eyes, Wen Zhixia, who never seemed to have many friends within the circle, was actually acquainted with Chairman Liao. Who is Chairman Liao? That was someone even their parents sought to ingratiate themselves with. Now, interacting amicably with Wen Zhixia, what message would that not send? The aristocratic young ladies and gentlemen with their noses in the air looked at Wen Jiwei for the first time with regret. Seeing the crowd around Wen Zhixia growing larger, Lai Chen, holding his glass, felt as if sitting on pins and needles. "Cousin, our days at the Wen Family Corporation next year might become difficult." They were now both at the Wen Family headquarters, competing on the same stage. The Wen family had been on the decline for the past 2 years, with Wen's uncle directly transferring one of the subsidiary projects to them. "Not necessarily," Wen Jiwei said quickly, her mind working fast. She pursed her lips. "Didn't I tell you about the get-together I had with Sister Su Jini last week? We managed to invite Yen Lu." Yen Lu? Lai Chen had just returned to the country recently and found the name familiar but did not know Yen Lu. "From the entertainment industry," Wen Zhixia said, mentioning Yen Lu without much concern. "She has a large fan base and the industry rates her highly. She currently has only one endorsement deal." If our team with the Ming family can invite her to be a joint spokesperson, we won't have to worry about fame or brand image. Yen Lu's popularity was now sky-high. Endowed with the auras of Daong, by Jian, and Director Jian, especially since rumors were that her marketing company was Shijiang, the top marketing team in the country. Chapter 777, 306 Jiangjing New Circle. New song release. Second release, _1 when Jixia and Bai Lian had long become the focus of attention at the event, drawing numerous gazes as soon as they appeared. Between them stood a lady in a champagne-colored cheongsam, draped with a white shawl and holding a black jade fan in her right hand, which she was just folding up, resting it lightly against the base of her thumb, conversing with Wen Jixia. Whatever she said caused the woman to open the fan and hide a smile behind it. Cheongsam black jade fan. Her aura of distinction made it clear she was no ordinary person. There were few at the event who recognized her, but there were indeed a handful. The girl sitting next to Wen Jiwei stood up in disbelief, her mouth agape. She, that is, Su. They were all part of Miss Su's second daughter's entourage, and had naturally met Mrs. Su, the second wife, through Su Jini. When Jiwei slammed down her wine glass, she had been in the mood for a drink when Liao Guangshuan arrived and was discussing projects with Lai Chen, but now that she saw Gao Yan she could not remain seated any longer. With a clank, she stood up. Not many knew Gao Yan at the event, but there were indeed a few who did. All set down their wine glasses, quietly watching the direction of the entrance. Bai Lian exuded an understated and gentle charm, but Gao Yan's air of nobility was unmistakable. Nurtured by a prestigious family, the guests at the banquet hall instinctively split into two rows, making way for them. Bai Lian tapped languidly on her phone, and at this scene she merely raised her eyebrows slightly. "Are you returning to Xiangqing tomorrow?" Gao Yan spoke slowly to Bai Lian, her voice carrying a tinge of reluctance. "Aren't you spending the new year in Jiangjing?" "These days it's only during the new year that I have a chance to visit home," Bai Lian explained. Ji Heng had come to Jiangjing for her. From any perspective, Bai Lian would not be spending the new year in Jiangjing. At the back of the crowd, Liao Guangshuan also caught sight of Gao Yan. He was taken aback for a moment, then quickly collected himself, setting down his champagne and moving forward, bowing slightly. "Mrs. Su, it's unexpected to encounter you here as well." Clearly Gao Yan was standing closer to Bai Lian. "Jiwei is getting engaged today," Gao Yan greeted Liao Guangshuan politely, while also casting a glance at the Wen family's matriarch and Wen's uncle. "I've come uninvited. I hope the elder Mrs. Wen will forgive me." She smiled softly. Her voice was gentle, but at that moment no one nearby dared to speak. The fact that Liao Guangshuan was respectful enough to address her as Mrs. Su, and repeatedly used the word you. Even those who had not seen Gao Yan before seemed to guess who she might be. The elder Mrs. Wen recovered, hurriedly walking forward with the help of the Wen family butler. "Mrs. Su, your presence graces our home. It is an honor for the Wen family." The entire banquet hall fell silent. For a while, only the voices of the elder Mrs. Wen and a few others speaking with Gao Yan could be heard, as everyone else quietly observed the scene. After a good while, Liao Guangshuan and a few others accompanied Gao Yan. It wasn't until then that Wen's uncle took a deep breath, turning to ask the Wen family butler beside him, "Who exactly is Zixia's friend? How come I've never heard of this person before?" Liao Guangshuan is one thing, but why has Gao Yan also come? Although Gao Yan and Liao Guangshuan were there for Wen Jixia, judging by the way Gao Yan looked at Bai Lian, everyone knew the reason for her visit. And there was more. Wasn't it said that Mrs. Su, the second wife, was quite fond of the second Miss Su? Miss Su was friends with Ming Zongyao, yet now Gao Yan was openly attending Wen Zixia's engagement party, making it seem that in Gao Yan's eyes, Miss Su was not as important as the rumors had suggested. The Wen and Lu family's engagement party hadn't invited the media or disclosed much publicly. But with so many people coming and going, there are no secrets in the circles. The matters concerning Liao Guangshuan and Gao Yan were still leaked. Information about Miss Su, the second daughter, receiving Gao Yan's favor stirred up controversy, and rumors surfaced in Jiangjing that Su Jin, Su Jini, and even Su Nanjing had become a thing of the past. A new social stratum was gradually rising in Jiangjing. The Mu family. Mu Yining sat in Tingyu Pavilion, conversing with Ji Xiaojun at the dining table. "What time is your flight tomorrow?" 6 o'clock, Ji Xiaojun replied. Ji Xiaojun hadn't returned to Xiangqing in quite a while, and although Mu Yining and the butler would have liked for Ji Xian's family to stay at the Mu residence for Chinese New Year, they didn't insist. Not to mention Bai Lian and Jianghu would definitely not stay in Jiangjing. 6 o'clock. The butler was a little surprised. He had flown to Xiangqing several times, usually landing at Beijing with the earliest flight at 5:20 and then at 8 o'clock. It must be due to the upcoming new year with added flights. Chapter 778, 306 Jiangjing New Circle. New song release. Second release. _Tumu Yining's gaze fell on Ren Wanxian who was beside her. Wanxian, aren't you going back? Not going back, Ren Wanxian put down her soup spoon. She had no affection for Ji Xiaorong. My grandpa will come to see me in a few days. Being able to spend the new year in Jiangjing, Ren Wanxian had no intention of returning to that remote city. Moreover, with so many social gatherings in Jiangjing around the new year, Ren Wanxian had finally established good relationships with those young ladies and gentlemen. She didn't want to miss this opportunity. The next day, on Jiang Fulai's private jet, Zhang Xiais was on Jiang Sun's plane for the first time. Sitting on the sofa playing games with his class 15 mates, he hardly played games anymore. Wang Qi asked him through the headset, "That's not right. Pingren, aren't you supposed to be going back to Xiangqing today? You should be on a plane now, right?" Zhang Xiais with his legs crossed, "Yeah. How can you be playing games with us on a plane?" Before Wang Qi replied, another person in the team spoke up. Zhang Xiais glanced up slightly at Jiang Fulai who was wearing a black sweater across from him, and muttered indistinctly, "I'm on Air China, they've got Wi-Fi now." "Oh, is that so?" The others in the team believed him. "Then next time we go back, we'll fly Air China too." Across from him, Jiang Fulai was sitting across from Ning Xiao, his slender, cold white hand gliding across the laptop screen, his smooth jaw lifting, his eyes still light and shallow. "Did someone guide you?" Across from him, Ning Xiao sat up straight. "Both Academician Ma and Senior He Wen have provided me with data and ideas. And there was Bai Lian who had helped him with the calculations. He couldn't have completed it so quickly on his own." Jiang Fulai swiftly scanned the final acknowledgements. Bai Lian, Headmaster He Wen, their names were all mentioned. He turned the computer away and stood up. "I've already reported this project for you. He'll give it directly to the chief editor at the Boss Summer Camp in a few days." Bai Lian was in a small room and Jiang Fulai went to find her. On the way he passed by Ji Xiaojun who was playing Go with Jiang He. Ji Heng and Xin Qing had returned to Xiangqing with Lu Xiaohan ahead of time. Lu Xiaohan wanted to learn from Grandpa Tao how to craft and control puppets and to complete a puppet show during the winter holidays. Not far away, Ming Dongheng, who was pouring water, couldn't help but look at Ning Xiao. Jiang Fulai spoke so casually to Ning Xiao, but from what he had overheard, the project that Ning Xiao was collaborating with He Wen, Bai Lian and Academician Ma on was a key project for the next 20 years. Uranium mining indeed. Once this project was announced, Jiangjing University and the scientific research community were about to face another storm. In just half a year's time, almost all roads in Xiangqing were widened and the green belts were well done. More than a dozen new residential buildings and shopping malls sprang up, and Suen's Xinda Hotel had been in business for several months now. Having disembarked from the plane and taken a car to Xiangqing, Zhang Xiais and Tang Ming among others, were all stunned. This development in Xiangqing was too rapid. It wasn't the same as the neglected border city of the past. Now, calling it a second-tier, almost first-tier city was not in doubt. Bai Lian got off at Purist Street. Purist Street, once sparsely populated, was now bustling with people and lined with shops. Bai Lian looked at a tourist sign next to Purist Street. 1,000-year-old tree, ancient alley, Qingshui Bridge. She was startled for a moment, and then realized that Purist Street had also become a popular spot for many people to check in at. "Alien, you're back?" A lady selling embroidery waved at Bai Lian, then turned to the customers at her stall and said, "This is our top scorer in Xiangqing's college entrance exam this year, Bai Lian. You all have heard of her, right? Her grandfather is a master embroidery teacher, and we've all learned from him. And Alien, before she went back to school last year, she even took the time to share her learning experiences and methods. My daughter ranked in the top 10 of her class in the final exams." Purist Street was filled with Bai Lian's fans. As soon as they heard that this was the legendary girl from Xiangqing, many people wanted to greet Bai Lian and ask about her study methods. But seeing the tall man by her side, they abruptly stopped in their tracks. The path leading to Jiheng's small courtyard had been renovated, and the stones underfoot no longer wobbled when stepped on. Jiang Fulai stood to the left of Bai Lian, lazily sticking one hand in his pocket, while holding Bai Lian's laptop with the other. Beside him, Jiang He toddled along trying to keep up with the two. "Well, return to Jiangjing on the 6th, go to the school team on the 7th, and then we leave for M Country on the afternoon of the 8th. The Bosch training camp isn't tough. If we're quick, we'll still have 3 days after our return to go visit the snowy mountains, Jianghu Lai said to Bai Lian with a calm composure, making plans. He didn't stay in Jiangjing for the new year again this year. With the 15-day holiday, most of the time was spent accompanying Bai Lian back to Xiangqing, a smaller part of the time reserved for travel for Bai Lian and himself. Master Jiang's arrangements were very reasonable. After the new year on the 6th day, Bai Lian and a few others finished celebrating the new year and returned to Jiangjing. Jianghu Lai just left the Jiang family behind, and as soon as he arrived in Jiangjing, he had to return to take charge of affairs. He was not very keen on going, and it was Su Nanjing who gently informed Bai Lian, who then urged him to return. She sent Jianghu Lai off in the car, then looked down at her phone. Several messages. Sister XN. Miss Bai Yen Lu's new song releases at noon today. Link. Today was the day Yen Lu's new song was released. It had been over half a month since Yen Lu recorded the song, and it had become a trending topic then. Now, finally about to be released, before noon various music apps were already lagging badly. Bai Lian scrolled down and sent Wen Jixia the address. She had planned to have lunch with Wen Jixia. Since the engagement banquet, one was in Xiangqing and the other in Jiangjing, they hadn't seen each other. Hu Yu, Lu Xian and a few others had returned to school after the holiday, and after learning that Ning Xiao, Tang Ming and others had also returned, some seniors invited them to a meal. Bai Lian had to prepare materials at school tomorrow and had no time, only today was she free. At the same time she wanted to introduce Wen Jixia to Hu Yu and the others. A large group of people were bustling in the private room. Wen Jixia breathed a sigh of relief upon finding out they were all talented students from Jiangjing University. Though it was somewhat intense to be in a group of Jiangjing University students, it was still more normal than her recent encounter with Chairman Liao and Gao Yan. She chatted in a low voice with Hu Yu and Bai Lian. The new year had just ended and Lu Xian and Tang Ming had already downed a few beers. At exactly 12 o'clock, Tang Ming suddenly remembered something, stopped talking, took out his phone, opened Weibo and helped Yen Lu retweet and like, then took a screenshot to show Zhang Xi's. This time it's all thanks to your influence, Lu Xian stated with a sigh, taking a drink, then noticed Tang Ming tapping on his phone. What are you doing? Yen Lu's new song. Tang Ming promoted to Lu Xian, opening Yen Lu's new song. Wanna listen? Everyone present had heard of Yen Lu, and Hu Yu was surprised. She released a new song? Wen Jixia quickly took out her phone as well. The music at the beginning sounded fine, but as it continued, it began to feel familiar. Hu Yu had a good memory. She had listened to the snippet Bai Lian played for her more than once and could even hum a little bit of it, so naturally, there was some recognition. Wait, what's this song called? Hu Yu raised her hand. Chapter 779, 307 Regretful Wang Xin, The Secret of the Ji Family _1 Wen Jixia had already seen Yen Lu's new song and she spoke. Flatboat. Flatboat? Hu Yu recalled the conversation with Bai Lian. Flatboat to the open seas. It matched again. Her gaze involuntarily fell on Bai Lian. Everyone at the large table was chatting, except for Bai Lian who was seated next to Wen Jixia and was eating slowly and methodically, looking down at her food. Most people at the dinner table were scrolling through Weibo. Wen Jixia has been busy lately. After the engagement banquet, the Wen family who knew her had gone into hiding, and she had been with her second uncle recognizing people, going all the way from the first to the current day. It was also today when she heard Bai Lian was back in Jiangjing that her second uncle finally let her come out. Leaving the day after tomorrow? Wen Jixia was surprised to hear how busy Bai Lian's schedule was. How long will this winter camp last? Bai Lian was almost done eating. She put down her chopsticks, leaned back and turned her head to have someone pack up some of this place's duck to take to the school for Yang Lin. 1 month. Bai Lian had never been abroad, but she had seen a world map. Junior sister, pack more. Senior brother Lu patted his chest. Today the teacher is treating us so everyone can eat their fill. Usually when Zhou Wenqing invited them for a meal, they bootleggers only dared to order a few greens. Today they ordered a table full of the most expensive dishes. After packing up the food, Bai Lian walked downstairs with Wen Jixia. That's not a bad thing for you. Wen Jixia retracted her gaze from the takeaway box in Bai Lian's hand and smiled. When you first returned to Xiangqing, I was afraid you might have a relapse. Bai Lian left in a hurry back then and phone calls couldn't get through. Wen Jixia was afraid she might become more decadent in Xiangqing, but thinking about it now, if Bai Lian still had the same personality as before, even if she were lucky to be saved after jumping into a lake, being driven by the Bai family to Xiangqing probably would have led her to repeat the same mistakes. No matter how you looked at it, it seemed like a dead end. The secret that Ms. Bai had once died, Bai Lian probably wouldn't tell anyone. I heard Xiaoming say last time, you want to ask Yan Lu to be a spokesperson? Bai Lian shifted the topic lightly. When Jixia also remembered the matter, Yan Lu is high profile, my second uncle's idea is to go straight for Lu Su. Lu Su. Bai Lian had never heard of them. She usually didn't pay attention to the entertainment circle, and the only artists she knew were Yan Lu and Mei Yi. A member of a boy band currently very popular too. As they reached the door, when Jixia explained to Bai Lian, the one family car was waiting at the hotel entrance. Xiaohan had officially become Wuxia's personal driver. The restaurant was in the university town, and many alumni reading for masters or doctorates were dining here. Just as they reached the ground floor, Hu Yu and their group ran into some acquaintances, people they used to hang out with often to discuss which tea house had good food. They had all heard about Zhou Wenqing's promotion. He would take up his new post at the start of the new semester, and all these people were there to congratulate Hu Yu and the rest. Quite a crowd. Xiaohan drove the car onto the main road and looked in surprise at Hu Yu and their group. Miss Bai knew a lot of people. These were all high-caliber students from Jianghu University, and in addition to being gifted, connections and mentor resources among these classmates were also crucial. His young mistress was indeed lucky. Back at the one residence, the butler handed Wen Jixia a cup of tea. Miss Ji Wei and the others went out today to discuss a collaboration with the Ming family. They mentioned before the new year that they intended to change the spokesperson. The old master's health wasn't good, and the young members of the one family were now competitors to one another. When Zixia's sudden emergence put pressure on Wen Jiwei, who began cooperating with the Ming family. Did they really make contact with Yan Lu? When Jixia took the teacup. This am not clear yet, the butler shook his head. On this side. Bai Lian was headed to the biology building, and Hu Yu asked about Bai Lian's song along the way. What you heard before was the demo that hadn't been completely fixed. Bai Lian's neck was loosely wrapped in the scarf that Sun Chen had given her, her tone unhurried. I haven't given you the song title fee yet, he'll let Yan Lu compensate you for it as endorsement pay. Bai Lian wrote a song for Yan Lu without asking for any copyright fee. Yan Lu donated part of the money in Bai Lian's name to an orphanage charity, and many in the entertainment industry donated to her charity foundation. Bai Lian's tone was as if she were saying, the weather's not bad today. At the door of the biology building, Bai Lian entered confidently. Hu Yu stood by the steps, with the sunlight overhead cool and not blinding. She felt somewhat in a daze. Her phone vibrated once. Hu Yu took it out for a look and saw a new friend request upon looking down. Hello, I am Yan Lu. Hu Yu, who had been unfazed seeing Bai Lian take out several tens of kilograms of palladium, always felt her endurance was quite high, but now being startled by this friend request was inevitable. Chapter 780, 307 Regretful Wang Xn, the Ji family's secret underscore. Who is Yan Lu now? A household name, a big star. During the holidays, when Hu Yu returned home, 7 out of 10 kids among her relatives were fans of Yan Lu. And now, this big star actually sent her a friend request? Hu Yu stared at the friend request, waiting at the door for quite some time before she went back to the lab. She didn't dare to tell the other 2 senior brothers but asked Tang Ming about Yan Lu. Sister Lu added you? Tang Ming was a little surprised but didn't make a big deal out of it. Don't judge by her cold beauty on the show, she is actually a really nice person. Hu Yu, the 7th day of the Lunar New Year. The students of Jianghu University's Tongfeng class that were going abroad were filling out forms in the physics building. The Tongfeng class started earlier than the regular freshmen. Their term began on the 9th day of the Lunar New Year. On the 7th day, some students had already arrived at the school to study in the physics building, and Wang Zai's group arrived early. Just as they got to the physics building, they saw from afar Bai Lian and her group holding several application forms and following behind the dean's assistant, who was chatting with Bai Lian, all smiles. Wang Shi and the others stopped in their tracks, standing aside watching them go upstairs. As Ding Wenyang was excitedly talking to Tang Ming with his head down, Yu Guang caught a glimpse of Wang Shi and the others. He hesitated for a moment and then casually glanced over. He still remembered their group's first project last year. If it weren't for Bai Lian preparing an extra draft back then, their group would probably have been the laughingstock of the entire school, so he had no good feelings for Wang Shi. He looked away as if at thin air. After they all went upstairs, the envy was hard to hide in the eyes of the boys standing with Wang Shi. Who would have thought that in the end, it would be Bai Lian's group going to the summer camp? Ding Wenyang and his group are really lucky. After being classmates for so many years, they were all too familiar with Ding Wenyang's abilities. In the past, it was mostly Wang Shi holding up that group. After Wang Shi joined their group, the rest of the class felt sympathy for Ding Wenyang's group. After all, they had lost a pillar and gained a few dead weights. Who could have known, those they pitted earlier eventually surpassed Gao Yuan's group and got into the winter-summer camp. And they all knew that Ding Wenyang's chance to go to the summer camp this time was entirely due to the few new students with Bai Lian. After all, she's the top scorer in the college entrance exam, truly freakish. She can even compare with senior He Wen. A boy was still speaking when someone pinched his arm hard. The person pinching him gestured for him to look at Wang Shi beside him. The boy looked at the displeased Wang Shi and quickly shut his mouth, realizing his blunder. Wang Shi, clutching his book, said nothing and walked out the door. After he left, the boys in the group exchanged glances. Wang Shi must regret it to death, right? Look at his eyes, he probably hasn't slept well recently, another shrugged. After all, he was originally in Ding Wenyang's group, and he would have had a spot in the summer camp. It was his choice to leave. Even they envied Ding Wenyang's group, let alone Wang Shi who was once part of it. Zhou Wenqing's office. He had come to the school a few days earlier to handle the transition, as the Tongfeng class was going to start term soon, and he came early to his office to deal with matters. Upon hearing Wang Zai's words, he looked up and put down his pen. Ding Wenyang's group? Professor Zhou, Wang Zai's hands dangled at his sides. If I join Ding Wenyang's group now, is there still a chance for me to go with them to the summer camp? Hearing Wang Zai's question, Zhou Wenqing finally remembered something. At the beginning of the term, Wang Shi was in Bai Lian's group. He pushed up his glasses and gazed deeply at Wang Shi. Theoretically, student Bai Lian's group is short one person, and if you join now you could catch up with them for the summer camp. Hearing Zhou Wenqing's words, Wang Shi felt his heart leap to his throat, his fingers twitching. So, that means, however, as I said before, I have no objections as long as your two groups reach an agreement. Zhou Wenqing withdrew his gaze and looked back at the documents. You should know that I always respect your decisions. You shouldn't have come to ask me. When Wang Shi had wanted to leave Ding Wenyang's group originally, Zhou Wenqing had not stopped him, letting them decide for themselves. Now, Zhou Wenqing still left the decision to Bai Lian's group. Zhou Wenqing bowed his head and just typed out a line when his phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Professor Zhou, hello, this is Gao Jiechen. I was wondering if you have time, I would like to invite you to a meal. Chapter 781, 307 Regretful Wang Xin, the Ji family's secret _3 Zhou Wenqing said he had no time and hung up the call. Next to him, his assistant asked in confusion, have there been so many people inviting you to dinner recently? The news that Zhou Wenqing's laboratory received 30 kilograms of palladium had spread. And of course the Gao family was not kept in the dark. Gathering so much experimental material in such a short time, it was easy for people to connect the dots to Wang Yufeng. In the evening, Bai Lian helped Hu Yu and the others move their laboratory. Zhou Wenqing was promoted. His research was published ahead of schedule, and his territory naturally expanded as well. After moving the laboratory, she went back to the apartment with Tang Ming and the others, packed her things and prepared to leave the next day. Bai Lian, Ding Wenyang, Wang Shi had been sitting on the steps at the entrance of the research center. When he saw Bai Lian and the others emerging, he stood up, his gaze fixed on them. I'm sorry for what I did, but I had no choice at that time. Could you forgive me just this once and speak to Professor Zhou on my behalf, to let me rejoin the team? What the heck? Bai Lian didn't look at him, just lazily wrapped her scarf around her neck and went to find Jianghu Lai's car. Her eyes low, she exuded an air of unhurried departure. Ning Xiao never cared much about others. After greeting Ding Wenyang, she too left. Leaving only Ding Wenyang and a few others standing coldly on the stairs, looking down at Wang Shi. No choice? You had no choice but to deliberately take note of our paper? To make us look foolish in the first literature report meeting, in front of President Huang and all the faculty and students? To receive the lowest score? But you were also guarding against me, weren't you? Wang Shi pursed his lips, deliberately showing me the paper you didn't need, sending out a false lead to Gao Yuan? And thanks to that, you became famous throughout the school. That wasn't entirely a bad thing for you, was it? Deliberately? Ding Wenyang tugged at the corner of his lip, his glance icy. Wang Shi, we never lied to you. The paper that Sister Bai later reported was her own work. It had nothing to do with us. If it hadn't been for her, all of us would have been tarnished with the stigma of imitating you. You're not unaware of the impact this would have in the academic world, are you? In academia, plagiarism is a serious matter. Having said that, Ding Wenyang didn't look at him again but turned around, descended the stairs and left. Wang Shi remained standing in place, unable to come to his senses for a long time. He and people like Gao Yuan always thought that Ding Wenyang and the others deliberately handed them a low-quality report. Only today did he realize. Was that paper really sorted out by Lien alone? Come to think of it, it wasn't surprising. She could ace the final exam set by academician Ma and had a comprehensive score 20 points higher than Gao Yuan, far surpassing the rest of them. You really shouldn't have left their group. Jiang Fulai was sitting in the passenger seat. Wearing a Bluetooth earpiece, he tapped his well-defined fingers on the steering wheel impatiently. So you guys can't match the acuity of a high school senior? There was an unclear mumbling from the other end. Jiang Fulai laughed coldly. Fine, I'll send you in for a year to try it out. The passenger door was opened. A chill wind rushed in. Jiang Fulai's tone paused slightly. He glanced at Bai Lian, tapped his Bluetooth earpiece with his slender fingers, his tone more restrained. Organize it tonight for me. He hung up the call immediately. Bai Lian took a paper bag from the passenger side, sat down and closed the door. You finished the call? It wasn't anything important. Jiang Fulai extended a hand, looking at the loose strands of hair near her eyebrow as he brushed them aside. Heading to Kangyu Tower? Jiheng and Jianghe were still in Xiangqing. Bai Lian had no preference for where to eat. Jiang Fulai drove out of the school gate as Bai Lian received a call from Jiheng. On the other end, Jiheng was obviously smoking heavily, speaking in a tone neither hurried nor slow. Xiaorong will be back tomorrow and this time he'll stay for a week. Tomorrow? Bai Lian lightly raised her eyebrows. She wasn't currently in Xiangqing and she was going abroad tomorrow. She truly had no time. Have him go to the Shenkang head store tomorrow and see Hen Jiwei for a pulse diagnosis. Over the new year, Hen Jiwei had gone back home as well. The Jiangjing store was left in Sun Chun's hands. A pulse diagnosis? Jiheng was sitting at a stone table under a banyan tree, exhaling a puff of smoke and looking at Mu Zhao playing chess not far away with Jiang He. Okay. Xiangqing. Knowing that Jiheng was going to be there for a while, and not returning to Jiangjing right away. The Ji family butler and Mu Yining brought gifts to Xiangqing personally to pay New Year respects to Jiheng. Mu Yining sat next to Jiheng, and upon hearing him mention Ji Xiaorong, she couldn't help asking, is he your second cousin? She had long heard from the butler that Jiheng had 2 sons and a daughter. Chapter 782, 307 Regretful Wang Xin. The Ji family's secret _4 Ji Milan had met Ji Xiaojun before, but the other person she had never seen. She heard from Jiheng that Ji Xiaojun was always very busy, with only a few days of rest a year. He will come over tomorrow. Jiheng tapped his cigarette ash. As Mu Yining listened to Jiheng's voice, she suggested, why not let him go to Jiangjing to help Xiaojun? There are also quite a few company positions available. That. Jiheng waved his hand dismissively. He doesn't need it. Mu Yining finished her meal and went back to the newly opened guest house on Purist Street. Xiaojie and the butler were both following behind her, and Mu Yining grew curious. What exactly does this second cousin of mine do? Having seen Ji Xiaojun and Bai Lian, Mu Yining was indeed curious about the Jiheng family. This enigmatic Ji Xiaorong seemed even more mysterious than Bai Lian, as she had yet to meet him. I've heard that Xiankang General Medical Hall in Xiangqing is highly skilled in medicine. The butler spoke up. We should try to invite them to Jiangjing in a few days to see the elder. Mu Yining nodded her agreement. Upon reaching the guest house, Mu Yining called Mu Yujun. Mu Yujun kept asking if they had time recently, as she wanted to bring the Gao family over to the Mu family's place for a New Year's visit. Sis, Mu Yining spoke as she pushed open the guest house window. We are currently in Xiangqing, do you want to come over? Mu Yujun naturally wouldn't come to a place like Xiangqing. Never mind, Jechen is also busy recently. Let's talk when you're back in Jiangjing. She hung up the phone. The next day, the 8th day of the first lunar month. Bai Lian flew overseas. Wallow Street was bustling with activity. Ji Xiaorong stood at the juncture, quite surprised by the changes in Xiangqing. This was Internet Celebrity Street, and Shenkang Medical Hall was easy to find, with people flocking to its doors. It was evident that the place was popular. The queue for Shenkang Medical Hall now stretched to the street corner. Ji Xiaorong was taken aback. Ren Jiawei, accompanying him in line, noticed Ji Xiaorong's surprise. Don't underestimate Shenkang. It's not easy to get their doctors to see you and perform acupuncture. Even after we get a number, we'll still have to wait another 2 hours at least. This is Chinese medicine, right? Ji Xiaorong looked at the sign at the entrance. Yeah, unexpected, right? Ren Jiawei smiled and sighed. It's now the hottest traditional Chinese medicine hall in the country. My dad tried to make an appointment for 3 days and still didn't get a slot with Dr. Hen. Dr. Hen? Ji Xiaorong was puzzled. The two of them waited in line at the entrance for 20 minutes before it was their turn to get a number. The person issuing queue numbers perked up upon hearing his name, immediately standing. Mr. G, it's you. Please proceed to the back room. Dr. Hen has been waiting for you there already. Ren Jiawei was taken aback. She exchanged a glance with Ji Xiaorong and followed the staff into the inner hall. Upon entering, Hen Jiwei stood up, knowing this was Bai Lian's uncle. He was very polite. Mr. Ji, hello, I am Hen Jiwei. Miss Bai asked me to take your pulse. Please have a seat. Another person poured a cup of tea for Ren Jiawei. Madam, please sit for a while. Ren Jiawei came back to her senses, somewhat taken aback, and sat down thoughtfully, looking at Hen Jiwei. Ji Xiaorong sat opposite Hen Jiwei, resting his hand on the table. I don't know if it's because of work, but I've had a headache problem for these past years. What is your profession? Hen Jiwei asked, trying to find the cause of the illness. Ji Xiaorong remained a bit silent before replying tentatively, clerical worker? Hen Jiwei, no, don't you know what you do yourself? Why do you look so questioning? 5 minutes later, Hen Jiwei suddenly let go of Ji Xiaorong's hand and lifted his head to look at him. He spoke seriously, Mr. Ji, you don't have a headache. Chapter 783, The Great Turmoil of 308, Alien has a box of underswan, it's not a migraine? Ren Jiawei had heard that Xian Kong had real skills and she was somewhat nervous. He's been taking pain medication for over 10 years. Ji Xiaorong lowered his gaze to his wrist, silent, simply pondering. Hen Jiwei soothed Ren Jiawei with a few words, then continued to ask Ji Xiaojun when he had started to fall ill. Traditional Chinese medicine interprets migraines as a blockage in the liver meridian. But Ji Xiaorong's pulse did not suggest a sluggish flow, it was tight and without perspiration. Nearly 20 years now, Ji Xiaorong recalled past events. When Ren Jiawei was in a car accident that resulted in a premature birth from shock, he had already been working overtime due to her expected delivery date. Having been tense without rest, he fainted on the road before even making it to the hospital. Fortunately, Secretary Zhou was there at the time to arrange everything properly. After hearing this, Hen Jiwei reflected for a moment. Mr. Ji, you should go to Xiangqing Hospital for an examination and let Dr. Lu take care of it. After the two left, Hen Jiwei took out his mobile phone and dialed Bai Lian's number. The phone was switched off. Hen Jiwei remembered that Bai Lian was going abroad with the school today, so he sent WeChat messages to both Dr. Lu and Bai Lian. Ren Jiawei and Ji Xiaorong went to see Ji Heng after having their blood drawn. Ren Qian had gone to Jiangjing, but Ji Xiaorong didn't go. He had only made a phone call to Ren Wanxian, as it was a tradition in the Ji family to pay homage to the tree god every new year. Upon arriving at the Ji family's courtyard, Mu Yining and others were already there. Ren Jiawei was dressed in a simple blouse and beige casual pants, exuding a powerful presence reminiscent of a successful career woman. By her side, Ji Xiaorong was quiet and reserved, emanating a faint scholarly charm, much like Ji Heng. Miss Mu, Ren Jiawei cordially shook hands with Mu Yining. Under the banyan tree, Mu Zhao, having spent the previous night desperately studying the game of Go, immediately started a rematch with Jianghu upon arrival. Jianghu wore a white small-collared shirt, fashioned with a traditional necktie, looking like an impassive gentleman as he extended his hand and mercilessly placed a black stone on the board. Mu Zhao, since the day he arrived from Xiangqing, he had never won against this kid opposite him. Ji Heng stepped out of the kitchen and saw this, patted Jianghu on the shoulder, "Don't bully our guest," then turned to a life-questioning Mu Zhao, "That's just how he is, even little Ning and the others can't beat him, don't overthink it." No one but Bai Lian and Jiang Fulai could handle this kid Jianghu. After the meal, Mu Yining and the others were ready to return to Jiangjing. There were issues in the Mu family that needed attention, and Mu Yining couldn't stay for too long. The Ji family escorted them to Purish Street. After boarding, it was the butler who broke the silence. "Miss Ren's parents are not like what I had imagined." Indeed, after Ren Wanxian returned home, Mu Yining and the butler did not think highly of her. Initially, the butler also didn't like Xinqing, but over the nearly 1 year together, though Xinqing was somewhat worldly, her nature was genuine. Ren Wanxian was completely different. She looked down upon Xinqing and Ji Heng while admiring high society. Arrogant and conceited. Her personality was a stark contrast to that of Ji Heng and Bai Lian, who were, to a degree, reserved in temperament. The butler originally thought she would have inherited some traits from her parents, but upon meeting them today found it strange. As the group chatted, they noticed that Mu Zhao was exceptionally silent. "Young Master Mu Zhao, what's wrong with you?" Xiaojia from the driver's seat noticed something off about the young master in the passenger seat today. Upon hearing this, both the butler and Mu Yining looked towards the front passenger seat. "Ah, Mu Zhao, who was looking down at Go Strategies, snapped out of his reverie as the greenery from the rearview mirror swiftly passed by. It's nothing. Being a student at Jianghu University, he couldn't help but feel a bit struck. On the airplane, Bai Lian was sitting with a group from Jianghu University. The attendees of the summer camp included not just freshmen but also sophomores, juniors, as well as some graduate and doctoral students. In total, nearly 50 participants formed a large group. Apart from the other passengers, most on the plane were students from Jianghu University. Bai Lian sat in the same row with Su Jiyue and another junior, with the socially anxious Su Jiyue taking the window seat and Bai Lian in the middle. The junior was Shi Rulin, one of the few female students among the group. You look much prettier in person than in photos. Shi Rulin clearly had heard of Bai Lian before and smiled upon seeing her. This time, there are only a few of us girls, so Director Meng asked me to take good care of you too. Don't worry, I've been to the summer camp before, I'll make sure to look after you both. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. It wasn't cold on the plane, and Bai Lian was wearing a white crossed-collar shirt with a black and gold horse-faced skirt, leaning lazily against the seat back. Her eyelashes cast a gentle shadow over her eyelids as she lowered her eyes. Thank you, Senior. Chapter 784. The Great Turmoil of 308, Alien has a box of underskirt. She lowered the tray table and took out her computer, placing it on top. Powered it on. Hey Junior, do you know who else is leading us to the summer camp besides Director Meng? Shi Rulin brought up the topic of the summer camp to Bai Lian and then whispered with a hint of mystery. Director Meng was the teacher in charge of the team this time. Who? Bai Lian had pretty much guessed it when Jiang Fulai accompanied her to the airport this morning. But she still played along with Shi Rulin. It's, the two institutes of Jianghu University, Shi Rulin continued in a lowered voice when she saw Bai Lian's interest. Apart from the Quantum Research Institute under Academician Ma, there's also an Aerospace and Dark Matter Research Institute. I heard that our team leader this time is from there. Bai Lian's fingertips tapped on the computer, launching the video software and playing the movie she had downloaded in advance. Shi Rulin talked, and Bai Lian just listened, sharing one of her earbuds with Shi Rulin. An airplane journey lasting over 10 hours. When the sky turned dark, most people on the flight were asleep, and Bai Lian went to the restroom. When she came out after washing her hands, the cramped aisle had one more person. He was slowly rolling up his sleeves, clad in a silver-gray satin shirt, exuding nobility and aloofness that were out of place in this cramped space. He glanced up upon hearing the door open. The aisle wasn't well lit, and a white curtain separated it from the first-class cabin up ahead. Would you like to come over to my side to rest for a while? Jiang Fulai, who was accustomed to privilege, didn't like sitting close to others, nor did he like noise. He extended his hand to embrace her, his voice low. Private space, a bit larger seating area. Bai Lian and the others were still students after all, and this international exchange was a rare opportunity. Jiang Fulai hadn't meddled much with Tang Ming and their social interactions. No need. Bai Lian wasn't as arrogant as the young Master Jiang, capable of adjusting to any setting. Sensing someone coming, she patted Jiang Fulai's hand as a signal to let go. Someone is coming. Jiang Fulai released her hand and slipped a new SIM card into her palm. Install it later. His expression turned unavoidably colder, and his light-hued eyes involuntarily fell on the curtain. The moment Director Meng pulled back the curtain, he felt the goosebumps on his hand and a chill made him shiver. Looking closely, he just happened to see Jiang Fulai's cold, indifferent face. Then, seeing Bai Lian coming towards him, Director Meng was jolted into action, letting Bai Lian pass behind him before speaking. Young Master Jiang, after you. Director Meng was the head of the Academic Affairs Office at Jianghu University. These 50 students were the future of Jianghu University, and he recognized almost every one of them, especially outstanding students like Bai Lian and Ning Xiao. He thought Bai Lian had disturbed Jiang Fulai and hurriedly led her away. Only after the curtain separated the two cabin areas did Director Meng breathe a sigh of relief. You weren't scared, were you? He whispered as he walked back to his seat, turning to speak softly to Bai Lian. Bai Lian shook her head. No. That's good. Director Meng, seeing Bai Lian's composed demeanor, felt reassured. The person just now is another teacher leading the team. If you have any issues later on, he hesitated for a moment, you can find me or Sure. After Bai Lian settled down in her seat, Director Meng wiped the sweat from his forehead. Turning back to look at the curtain, he thought that this young Master Jiang really lived up to the rumors. He wondered if any student would dare to ask him any questions during this trip. The plane arrived directly at the airport in the foreign country. Once Bai Lian disembarked, she took out her phone, checked it, and had already installed a local SIM card while on the plane. After switching on the local data, she first video called Jianghu to reassure him of her safety. On the other end of the video call, it was already nighttime for Jianghu. Ji Xiaorong hadn't left yet and was holding an unwashed dish as he greeted Bai Lian. "Happy New Year, are you in M country?" He recognized the airport background behind Bai Lian at a glance. "Happy New Year." Bai Lian also changed her greeting very politely, "Uncle." This was the first time Bai Lian had referred to herself as uncle to Ji Xiaorong. He paused, his usually expressionless face softening a great deal, and his voice grew tender. "Do you want any gifts for the new year? When your grandfather arrives in Jianghu, he'll have him bring them to you." Bai Lian lacked for nothing, so she shook her head. In the video, after pondering for a moment, Ji Xiaorong refrained from asking Bai Lian further and handed the phone to Jianghu, who was eagerly looking on. "Junior, this is a portable Wi-Fi." While waiting for the luggage, Shi Rulin, holding the travel Wi-Fi collected from Director Meng, came over and saw Bai Lian making a video call. "Did you activate roaming?" Chapter 785. The Great Turmoil of 308, Alien has a box of undershirt. "No," Bai Lian told Jianghu, and after hanging up the video call she explained to Hu Yu, "I'm using a local SIM card." A local SIM card? This could only be obtained locally. Shi Rulin had visited once and hadn't bothered to get one herself. Seeing the phone card in Bai Lian's hand, she assumed Bai Lian had traveled here recently and didn't ask further. "All right, if you need Wi-Fi, just connect directly." She showed Bai Lian the password. Several people arrived at the summer camp. It lasted for a month, and every student stayed in the temporary dormitories on-site, separated by gender, usually 3 to 4 people per room. Bai Lian hadn't brought much, just some clothes for daily change and a black cloak. Upon reaching the dormitory, she didn't go outside to play but instead took out her phone to swipe through questions on the app. The preparatory camp's app led to a challenge question bank that was essentially like defeating one opponent after another. Each question was interesting and required a specific method to solve, but the points awarded were quite generous. The more succinct the solution, the more points awarded. Bai Lian now faced a 6-degree function problem, which could be solved even with brute force. She ingeniously substituted the variable, and her approach to the problem instantly became clear. She photographed her answer and submitted it. Such answers had to be reviewed before points were awarded. After sending it off, Bai Lian turned to a message from Jianghu. He had gone straight to a meeting upon landing and was still tied up, so he suggested she should eat first. Bai Lian responded with a number and then noticed another message. It was a picture sent by Dr. Liu. Many chemicals and professional terms. After glancing over it, Bai Lian immediately forwarded it to Yang Lin. It was almost midnight in China, and Yang Lin had not returned to her dorm. While on the road she saw it and called Bai Lian back. "Neurotoxins. Ingesting a certain dose of the drug will prevent striated muscles from contracting, affecting respiratory motion. Long-term oxygen deprivation can damage brain cells and also cause memory impairment." Bai Lian recalled Su En's symptoms and found them identical to what Yang Lin described. Fortunately, the timely rescue had not caused any irreversible damage. If these were Su En's symptoms, then what about Ji Xiaorong? Recalling what Hen Jiwei had relayed from Ji Xiaorong, Bai Lian hung up the phone and sent Mao Kuan a message. "Find an opportunity to get a strand of Zioki's hair." Meanwhile, in China, at Jianghu University, the person responsible for reviewing the preparatory camp was woken up from sleep by a colleague's call. "Professor, the AI just audited a result. I think you should know about this." "What result?" The person in charge put on a jacket, puzzled, and headed into the study to open the preparatory camp backend. Check. On the backend, marked with a star, was Bai Lian's answer, which she had just submitted. He paused for a moment, then put on his glasses, took out a pen and began to calculate Bai Lian's process. Although this problem wasn't one of history's most challenging, her substitution method was absolutely stunning. After finishing, it was almost identical to the standard answer. He awarded double the points. After the scores were issued, the person named Bai Jian on the leaderboard saw their points change instantly, surpassing Scholar Ma, becoming 1417892. Some people are naturally suited for mathematics. Scholar Ma is getting on in years, and his thinking isn't as agile as it was when he was younger. He's now focusing on quantum mechanics and doesn't have the time to consider many clever approaches anymore. He doesn't need to use these to prove himself and is too lazy to expend effort in this area. But some young people like Jiang Shijue and He-Wen do need these to demonstrate their capabilities. Jiang Shijue surpassed Scholar Ma's points 2 years ago, which also stirred up quite a buzz at that time. And now, Another has appeared who surpassed Scholar Ma to become the new NO3. Even though it was approaching midnight in China, quite a few people were still stirred by this. At the Gao family. Gao Yi put down his teacup. For this year the Gao family had taken quite a beating. Now that Jianghu Lai had gone abroad, he dared to show his face again. Have you still not found out who this Bai Jian is? No, the secretary lowered their head. Useless. Gao Yi stood up and paced around the study. You must find out about this person by any means necessary, whatever methods or measures it takes. Currently, those known in the rankings were either in Jianghu Lai's team or Scholar Ma's people. Scientific research teams also require actual research achievements and a reputable front. Gao Yi hadn't been able to produce compelling scientific results, and as for the reputable front, so far they only had Gao Zhechen. He was just a water PhD about whom most professors had reservations. Those uninformed might be misled by the Gao family's propaganda, but the current Gao family urgently needed someone capable of holding their ground. Chapter 786. The Great Turmoil of 308, Alien has a box of _4 clearly, the suddenly emerged Bai Jian was a perfect fit. An hour later. Bai Lian was eating at the training camp's cafeteria. Ning Xiao, Tang Ming and the others had already gotten their meals in the cafeteria, and Shi Rulin joined Bai Lian and Su Jiyue for dinner. Due to the time difference with the domestic time they were having dinner. During the meal, Shi Rulin kept introducing the winter-summer camp to the junior students. Lectures from various professors, there might be a lot of content you might not understand, so remember you can record it if necessary, Shi Rulin explained while eating and browsing her phone. These academic overachievers handled multitasking with ease. Shi Rulin dropped her chopsticks inadvertently while scrolling through something. Opposite her, curious about everything overseas, Ding Wenyang looked up. Senior sister, are you all right? Oh my god. Shi Rulin came back to her senses, lifted her head to look at the people around the table. You all have the pre-camp app, right? Hurry up and look. Big news. Ding Wenyang and the others all had the app. Everyone except Bai Lian took out their phones to check. As soon as Ding Wenyang logged in, he saw the public screen flooded with comments. Worthy of my god Jian. Damn, I knew God Jian could make it to the top 10 but I didn't expect it to be this high. Ding Wenyang reached out and opened the overall rankings. He immediately saw, in 01. L9999999 and 02. Jiang Shijue 15799-159 and 03. Bai Jian 14178-952. In the midst of shock, Ding Wenyang heard Tang Ming whisper next to him, finally he's third. Top 10 maybe no one noticed. But third place, about to catch up Jiang Shijue, attracted much more attention. The next morning. Su family. Bai Jian, Su Jueming looked down at the name, took a sip of tea and set down his teacup. What did Jiang University say? I've asked around at the teachers, no news. Su Jini sat at the round table and picked up a pastry. This person. Their identity level is highly classified. In the school many people's identities were kept secret. It was not surprising that Bai Jian's identity was also kept secret. Keep probing and also reach out to the Qin family. Su Jiming's face was stern. We can't let Su Nanjing and the others monopolize the discussion. What does Vice Dean Zhou say? He's politely declined us 3 times, Su Jin spoke up from the side, though today he has a dinner with people from the General Logistics Department. The General Logistics Department? Su Jueming looked up. The Gao family is considering replacing someone in the department. Su Jin slightly lifted his head and spoke softly to Su Jueming, and it seems one of our Su family members is on the shortlist. Su Jueming stood up. Who? Su He. Su Jueming braced his hands on the table, then after a moment said, let's approach the Gao family. Elsewhere. Su Nanjing, Qin Beixian, Jiang Shijue and Qin Yongquan, a few people who didn't often gather, were having a meal together after the new year. This time Ming Dongheng was absent. Ming Dongheng had gone overseas with Jianghu Lai. At the table, Qin Beixian inserted a gun into her knee holster, casually tied up her hair with an elastic band. He's really lucky. Wherever Jianghu Lai went, he took that person with him, indeed very fortunate. Has Qin Lupeng been reactivated recently? Jiang Shijue turned towards Qin Beixian to ask about Qin Lupeng's situation. Qin Beixian crossed her legs. You know Yu Hongyi is with Eastern Armed Forces, her senior brother is familiar with people on Bakhtur Street, and the Qin family is now trying to negotiate with Wang Yufeng. She helped make the connection. That Professor Zhou, you guys helped me set up a meeting. Jiang Shijue remained his gentlemanly self. That's a job for Jiang's heir, we're not capable of that. Su Nanjing didn't quite understand all this and looked up. Which Professor Zhou? Chen Beixian poured herself a drink, explaining, Deputy Dean of Physics at Jianghu University, just promoted because of a project. Last month he managed to collect 30 gene of palladium in just 3 days, coincidentally during the time Dawson family members were in Jiangjing. This Vice Dean Zhou is not simple. Palladium? Su Nanjing was puzzled. The last blow from Ming Dongheng had been too much. Are you sure it's palladium? Isn't this metal also tough to collect? Chen Beixian glanced at him dismissively. Chen Yongquan explained to Su Nanjing, it's difficult to purify, there's not a lot of it stored domestically, it's all used in the military industry, so him getting it in such a short time means he has some extraordinary channels behind him. Su Nanjing shrugged, Alien has a big box of it on her balcony. Chapter 787, 309 Brother Jiang, I have taken the person away. _1 Chen Baixuan's movements were slightly startling as she pinched her chopsticks and glanced sideways. A box? The elder statesman Su had already started to delegate authority to Su Nanjing, teaching him personally by his side for the past 6 months. He stayed in hotels for extended periods and seldom visited Shanghai apartment, just a few times. Chief Chen looked down and poured tea methodically, not appearing surprised in the least. He clearly remembered the rare metal that almost caused Su Nanjing an embarrassment. Are you questioning my memory? I'll take you to see it. He bowed his head to message Bai Lian. It's morning in China. It's 9 at night here, waiting for Shi Rulin to bring coffee over. Seeing the message from Su Nanjing, she reached out to reply. Bai Lian's reply was quick. You can take it, Zhang Xiais and the others are in 303, not far away. Shi Rulin approached Bai Lian, coffee bag in hand. Several foreign youths made a face at Shi Rulin before laughing and walking away. Bai Lian narrowed her eyes, recognizing one of them as a male student who sat in the same lecture hall as her. Her expression cold, she grabbed her phone and went straight over. Hey! Shi Rulin noticed Bai Lian's expression and hurriedly grabbed her sleeve. Better not to invite trouble, we're here to study. She shook her head at Bai Lian. As just 2 girls, Shi Rulin was also afraid. Bai Lian glanced at Shi Rulin, withdrew her gaze and took the coffee bag from her. Shanghai apartment. In 303, Zhang Xiais was doing his homework, Yang Lin was printing materials in the study, and Yen Lu was downstairs helping to move flower pots. Zhang Xiais had an early start for his senior year of high school, and he arrived early. A year had passed and Zhang Shi's hair had grown out. Had cut a layered hairstyle just before the year's end. Upon opening the door and seeing the 4 people, he first greeted someone he knew well, Uncle Chen, Brother Su. Lastly, his gaze fell on the 2 people beside Su Nanjing. The woman had black hair cut short, roughly chin length, casually tucked behind her ears, and was wearing a body-hugging outfit complete with a holster on her knee. Next to her stood a mild-mannered man in a suit. Good little brother. Su Nanjing went to put an arm around Zhang Shi's shoulders and sidestepped to introduce them. This is Shi Jue, and this is Sister Beixian. Do you recognize them? Su Nanjing's approach could be described as actively friendly. This surprised both Chen Beixian and Jiang Shijue, who also extended their friendliness toward Zhang Xiais. Su Nanjing led them to the balcony. It was still the same cardboard box, just as Su Nanjing had left it last time. He lifted the seal and took out a piece of palladium, showing it to Chen Beixian. This is it, right? Alien said she gave it to me. Sunlight streamed through the glass, shining off the cold, silvery metal in Su Nanjing's hand. The pa on it was clearly visible. Chen Beixian took it for a glance, exchanging looks with Jiang Shijue. Her eyes then fell on the box of palladium in the corner, slipping into thought. Such a large box, was it about 50 pounds or more? Su Nanjing went upstairs to 403, with Chen Beixian and Jiang Shijue following him. They ascended only 1 flight of stairs. At the top they saw a middle-aged man descending. Dressed in just a long t-shirt and a coat in the dead of winter, he had a rugged look but a warm smile on his face. Upon seeing Su Nanjing and the others, the man gave a slight smile. Su Nanjing was just pondering that this building probably wasn't open for renting or selling anymore when he saw Zhang Xiais open the door to 303, poking his head out. Dad, hurry over, Yang Lin's books are packed. Coming. Zhang's dad rolled up his sleeves. Chen Beixian observed Zhang's dad's retreating figure thoughtfully as she continued upstairs with Su Nanjing. Are you sure that was Miss Bei's classmate? Once upstairs, Jiang Shijue questioned Zhang Xiais, perplexed by Su Nanjing's behavior toward him. Chen Beixian was still holding a square piece of palladium, and upon hearing the question, she too turned to look at Zhang Xiais. Bai Lian was just a freshman. Her classmates should also be first years. Su Nanjing's cordiality towards Zhang Xiais was somewhat excessive. Even if that was Bai Lian's friend, he shouldn't be so friendly. That wasn't just Bai Lian's classmate, it was also Qi Yunde's student, Qi Lu's second generation. Possibly to prevent the Chen family and Jiang Shijue from jumping the gun and poaching him, Su Nanjing smoothly deflected. It's nothing, the Professor Zhou you mentioned might have some connection with alien. Chen Beixian nodded and after Su Nanjing finished speaking asked, so where did this palladium come from? Did you ask? It's not that she didn't want to ask, it's just that she and Jiang Shijue still hadn't added Bai Lian as a contact. Chapter 788, 309 Jianghu. I've taken the person away _2 abroad. This is Professor Wei who is currently an international faculty member in our country. Director Meng introduced to a group of students in front of the middle-aged professor. He's the head of the MSNT laboratory in our country and also your direct senior brother, having been one of the top 3 to enter the physics program. Professor Wei in his 40s, glanced over the group of students from Jianghu University and interrupted Director Meng's effusive praise. I've specially come to listen to your 2 lectures. No one could question Jiang Fulai's expertise in dark matter. The news of his lecture drew more than Professor Wei to this place. You all stay here and wait for the others to gather. He'll take Professor Wei upstairs first. When Wei Lan interrupted, Director Meng wasn't surprised and led him away. The rest looked at each other in confusion. Beside Bai Lian, Shi Rulin finally breathed a sigh of relief. Professor Wei really puts on a lot of pressure. Indeed, Ding Wenyang spoke up from the side. His gaze made me uncomfortable. Ning Xiao and Tang Ming remained silent. With just a glance at Bai Lian, they actually all knew that Bai Lian seemed not to like foreigners, especially people from our country. Speaking of pressure, some seniors who knew a bit of the inside story said, the professor leading our group this time is also said to be under a lot of pressure. Our teacher mentioned in the group chat before that we should talk less and do more. Shi Rulin had said the same thing to Bai Lian and the others. As the group waited for others to gather, they started to talk about the leading professor they were about to meet. Bai Lian stood still, looking down and casually swiping on her phone. The climate here wasn't as cold as Jiangjing. She wore a diagonal collared top made by Ji Heng and a pleated skirt of wind chime color, silent on the side, exuding an extraordinary presence that made the passing foreigners stop and greet her. Arguing voices came from the building. Jiang Xiao. The previously dismissive Wei Lan was now struggling to keep up with Jiang Fulai's pace. You can't do this, international scientific exchanges are for research progress. We all share the same goal, refusing my students. Very familiar Chinese. Hearing the voice, the gathering students from Jianghu University couldn't help but look towards the source of the argument. They immediately spotted the young man in the center. He was dressed in a black minimalist overcoat, and as he suddenly lifted his eyes, the noisy group of Jianghu University students quieted down at the sight of his cold and faint eyes. Wei Lan, who had been making a commotion, noticed the surrounding quiet and looked up. This time, when he looked at Jiang Fulai again, the students you brought this time are the same. Can you guarantee how many of them will secure a permanent position in the future? With the same achievements, I could secure a permanent position there, but at Jianghu University, it wasn't my turn. I don't think my choice was wrong. Jiang Fulai looked down, impassive as he regarded Wei Lan. Have you ever read history? Do you know why there have only ever been so many official positions available from ancient times to now? Wei Lan was taken aback, not expecting the conversation to escalate to a historical issue. Because you are in a country with a rich legacy, with vast lands and abundant resources. We all aim to forge ahead unwaveringly. The positions are limited, and people more excellent and harder working than you are as numerous as carps crossing the river. If you want to fight for a position, convince me with your strength like Hewen, rather than standing here and questioning me powerlessly. The tone was cold and mocking. Bai Lian had never seen Jiang Fulai adopt such an attitude. She glanced at Wei Lan beside Jiang Fulai. Beside her, Su Zhiyue and people like Ding Wenyang almost buried their heads in the ground. After Jiang Fulai spoke, he walked directly towards the venue, still composed and dignified, with no trace of emotion on his face. After he and his assistant left, Director Meng finally reacted and quietly told the group of students, "What are you waiting for? Let's go, the lecture is about to start." "Oh," Ding Wenyang responded. Then he silently watched the nearly indistinguishable black figure in the distance. Seeing Ning Xiao and Tang Ming still casually discussing their subjects, he turned to ask the senior beside him, "Senior, who is our team leader for this visit?" "Well, according to my teacher," the senior said mysteriously, "we're all lucky this time. Otherwise, given our intellect, it would be quite difficult to meet him in person." Evening. Bai Lian was organizing the notes she had taken throughout the day in her dormitory when her phone lit up. It was from Jiang Fulai, who sent her a location. Not far from her dormitory. Bai Lian mentioned it to Su Jiyue and then went downstairs. Shi Rulin had to buy a cup of coffee every night. Her body clock hadn't adjusted yet, she didn't sleep well every day, relying on coffee to sustain her. Chapter 789, 309 Jianghu. I've taken the person away _3. She hadn't walked many steps downstairs when she saw Shi Rulin approaching from the direction of the dormitory. Bai Lian stopped at the intersection, her eyes narrowing slightly. Not far away, Shi Rulin, holding a coffee, frowned, wanting to avoid the blue-eyed boy in front of her. The boy continued to make provocative gestures at Shi Rulin. Bai Lian hadn't been clear about what those gestures meant yesterday, but after looking it up last night, she understood. Shi Rulin only wanted to shake off those two boys. Seeing Bai Lian approaching, she quickened her pace and then gave Bai Lian a meaningful look. With a coffee in one hand and the other clutching at Bai Lian's sleeve, the gesture still implied she wanted to keep the peace. Today, however, Bai Lian did not comply with the implied request to leave. Instead, she looked over at the two foreigners. The wind swept back her wispy bangs, revealing the bottomless depths of her apricot eyes. In her right hand, she still held a black cell phone, with a WeChat conversation displayed on the screen. Her fair and smooth fingertips tapped idly on the side of the phone. She smiled at the two foreigners, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Instead, it carried a thin chill and a blatant provocation. Dada. The man on the left stretched out two fingers, a laughing sound emerging from his mouth as he spoke. But as soon as his hand reached in front of Bai Lian, she gently pinched his two fingers. Snap, a sound. The cracking of a joint could be heard. The man looked down at his hand, his face pale, staring at his own fingers. His companion, seeming to realize the terror of Bai Lian's martial prowess, involuntarily took a step back and looked up at her. Under the street lamp, Bai Lian maintained her lazy smile. She put her hand back into the pocket of her pleated skirt and took a napkin from Shi Rulin's coffee bag, wiping her fingertips that had touched the man at a leisurely pace. Her tone was light and breezy. Sorry, I might have been too strong. She still spoke in Chinese. The two foreign men took several steps back, their eyes wide with shock and fear as they retreated while pulling out their phones to make a call. It was unclear if they were calling the police or their own teacher. Junior sister. Shi Rulin finally reacted, grabbing Bai Lian's wrist. Her gaze searched for nearby surveillance cameras. He's a local and he will definitely call the police. The school might deport us at that point. Senior sister. Bai Lian ignored the screams of the two men, simply pushing the coffee into Shi Rulin's hand with a pair of pitch-black eyes looking at her. Don't worry, go back and review properly. I've organized today's notes. They're on the table. You and Jiyue can go through them before sending them to Ding Wenyang and the others. Perhaps it was her naturally reassuring tone, but it was only after Shi Rulin returned to the dorm that she realized. Sitting at Bai Lian's desk, she recognized the neat handwriting in the notebook, feeling a sense of familiarity, but then she immediately remembered the evening's incident and took out her phone to call Director Meng. Jianghu Lai's lounge. When Bai Lian arrived, Jianghu Lai was sitting by the window with a computer in front of him. His brow was cold as he stared at the screen, obviously in a meeting. Include him? He scoffed, not saying much afterwards, but his mocking expression was evident. At this time there weren't many people inside the coffee shop. Bai Lian sat by his side, messaging Zhang Xiais. Zhang Xiais wasn't familiar with foreign laws. He had just finished a call with Qi Yundai and now sent a message. The few sentences of your recording are enough to bankrupt them. A shadow fell across the table and Jianghu Lai looked up, aware of Bai Lian's arrival. The hardness on his face softened a bit as he spoke briefly to the person on the other end of the meeting before shutting his laptop. How was the lecture today? He asked, raising his hand slightly. Ming Dongheng, who was waiting nearby, came over with a food container, opening it to reveal the meal inside. The cafeteria here served Western food, which neither he nor Bai Lian liked much. If he had time in the evening, he'd bring something over for her. It's okay, Bai Lian said. Although she didn't speak much English, she understood it and picked up her chopsticks deliberately. Aside from disliking the atmosphere here, especially those two foreigners at night, she could adapt to everything else. Jianghu Lai noticed the indifference in her eyes and brows. He leaned his hand on the table and asked in a steady voice, "Did something happen on your way here?" "Two guys who can't see straight," Bai Lian said indifferently, recounting the incident on the road. "The senior was alone, trying to keep the peace, but I couldn't hold back and I took action. And it wasn't just action, she was going to demand compensation for her emotional distress." Upon hearing this, Jianghu Lai had a pretty good idea of what had happened. "Don't worry," he said, knowing that some international students often encountered ill-intentioned foreigners. He stared out the glass window and whispered, "It will get better with time." The next day at 8 in the morning, Director Meng received an official email from the summer camp first thing in the morning, asking him to bring 2 students to the office. This was not a small matter. Principal Bai Lian and Shi Rulin had just arrived when Director Meng, accompanied by 2 other school teachers, was calling Shenyu. "Principal, this is the situation. The other party has 2 broken fingers and now the officials want us to talk. It looks like they want to send the 2 students back to their country." He stood at the entrance of the office, his face filled with anxious urgency. This was no small matter and Shi Rulin dared not conceal it. She had informed Shenyu last night. On the other end of the phone in Shenyu's office. It was 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening and he hadn't left. Inside the office, Gao Yi's voice came through the phone to Director Meng. "Principal Shen, are you still sending Gao Yuan and his group after hearing this? Such a great opportunity and Tongfeng class is causing trouble again. Are they trying to reduce the quota for next year's summer camp?" The voice was so loud that Shi Rulin could hear everything clearly. Her face turned pale. Director Meng hung up the phone, looked at the 2 girls in front of him and sighed. "Morrison, the student involved, is inside. Remember to be polite and try to get his forgiveness." Morrison was the foreigner who made discriminatory gestures at them last night. Shi Rulin hastily agreed, her voice filled with trepidation. Bai Lian remained as composed as ever, standing tall and straight, her spine never bending no matter the situation. Director Meng pushed the door open and went in. In the office, Morrison had a plaster cast on his finger and stood in front of the person in charge. Upon seeing Bai Lian, he shrank back for a moment before looking her way again. Director Meng smiled and said a few polite words to the person in charge, including mentioning Jianghu University's compensation. Seeing Director Meng's softening demeanor, Morrison became emboldened and refused to accept the apology. "You stupid jerk." Director Meng gave a forced smile to Morrison. Bai Lian crossed her arms and gave Morrison a nonchalant look. "You," Morrison, seeing Bai Lian's expression, wanted to say something else. The door was knocked and then someone came in without waiting for a response from inside. Ming Dongheng, dressed in black, stood tall and large at the doorway, his stern gaze sweeping the office before stepping aside so others could enter. Jianghu Lai came in wearing a coat, casually holding an envelope behind his back. As soon as he stepped in, Morrison, who had just begun to speak, seemed as if he was choked mid-sentence. The room fell silent. The person in charge of the base, who had been speaking English to Director Meng, was taken aback when he saw Jianghu Lai, but then stood up and said in very standard Mandarin, "Mr. Jiang, what brings you here?" Jianghu Lai didn't look at him but simply placed the unmarked envelope in front of the person in charge and spoke indifferently, "I'm taking the 2 of them away. If there are any follow-up issues, contact my assistant directly." Chapter 790, 310 is back. _1 Jianghu Lai was leaving and this time, no one dared to say anything as the person in charge. Facing Director Meng and the others, he even had a smile on his face, showing a starkly different reaction from just moments ago. He personally escorted Jianghu Lai out. "Mr. Jiang, regarding your lecture next week." Director Meng hadn't expected Jianghu Lai to personally intervene, and after being momentarily stunned, he gave Shi Rulin and Bai Lian a look, indicating for them to leave the office with him. Ming Dongheng was the last to leave. As he left, he cast a dark look at Morrison. Morrison stiffened his neck and had not dared to make a sound from beginning to end. It wasn't until they had left that he, gripping his cast-fitted finger, dared to speak up, questioning the person in charge why they had let that group go. "Even if they compensate double, I will not forgive them." The person in charge of the summer camp looked down at the envelope in his hand, which had a court seal stamped on it, then looked at Morrison for a long while before shaking his head. "This is a court summons. You should seriously consider whether you've done anything." This kind of thing wasn't the first occurrence, but clearly Morrison had kicked the iron plate this time. The incident from last night had resulted in a summons being delivered first thing in the morning. Not many locals could manage that, and their capabilities abroad were evident without saying. Morrison hadn't expected that the very actions he often took against others would lead to 2 broken fingers, not to mention a definite visit to court. Outside, Director Meng caught up with Jianghu Lai. The matter could have been resolved with just a few words from Jianghu Lai, but it was a difficult issue for Director Meng to handle, affecting not only next semester's school quota but also posing significant academic trouble for the 2 students, Bai Lian and Shi Rulin. Likewise, Jianghu Lai, who was generally as busy with lab work as academician Ma, was not someone Director Meng expected to show up today. Jiang Fulai's research on dark matter was at the forefront, and like academician Ma, he wielded significant influence in the scientific community. Countless universities abroad would bend the rules to have them teach. In general, when he spoke, most people would show them respect. Director Meng, even if I were not leading the team this time, you would still have to report this incident to the embassy. Jiang Fulai stopped, his features shaded as he stood with his back to the sunlight, his black coat billowing. When they encounter such issues abroad, at the end of the day, it's our responsibility. He continued walking forward. After listening to Jiang Fulai's words, Director Meng remained silent for a few seconds before catching up. Things are much better now than before, thanks to you and academician Ma, we have the confidence to confront them. The two walked ahead in silence. Behind them, Shi Rulin carefully spoke with the other two teachers. Are we okay now? She didn't know Jiang Fulai, only having heard of him vaguely from her own teacher and others. With Mr. Jiang stepping in, there should be no major issues. The teachers nodded in agreement, one of them lowering his voice. But sure, remember to put your safety first when you're abroad. If something like this happens again, inform a teacher immediately. And you, Bai. As he spoke, he turned his head slightly to address Bai Lian. Bai Lian snapped back to reality, looking at the teacher politely. Please go ahead. She possessed a traditionally classic beauty with almond-shaped eyes and finely arched eyebrows, neither warm nor fiery but gentle and bright. Despite only interacting for a few days, both students and teachers at the summer camp had grown very fond of her. Seeing her like this made it hard for the teacher to imagine how she had broken Morrison's 2 fingers. Bai, your safety is the most important. The teacher finally didn't blame her. You were lucky this time with Mr. Jiang leading the team, otherwise we might not have been able to protect you. He sighed. The matter with Morrison eventually went to court. It didn't resolve quickly, but most at the school knew that the students from Jiang University were not to be trifled with. As the situation was satisfactorily resolved, Shi Rulin was very happy, while Bai Lian became even more silent. Isn't Lian coming down for dinner? In the cafeteria, Ding Wenyang took a piece of toast, nibbling on it lifelessly, and asked Shi Rulin across him. She's working on a problem. Shi Rulin put down her tray, sitting next to Su Jiyue. He'll see if there's a place nearby selling pancake fruit or rice that I can bring back for her later. She had glanced at Bai Lian on her way out, who was engaged with a complex structural diagram. Even Shi Rulin, who was close to graduating from her 3rd year, did not understand it. Ning Xiao sent a message on his phone, then said to Shi Rulin, Senior, you don't need to bring anything. Someone has already brought her food. Chapter 791, 310 is back. _2 Shi Rulin nodded, not asking more questions. Across from her, Ding Wenyang and Tang Ming began discussing the issue of uranium mines. In the past few days, Ning Xiao and others had noticed that Bai Lian was working even harder than before, especially after the incident with Morrison. Ning Xiao and Tang Ming were easily influenced by Bai Lian. When she became more focused, they naturally didn't slack off for even a moment. They were always studying anyway, and now it was even more so. Tang Ming used to chat with Ding Wenyang about the surroundings during meals, but now that had all turned into academic and professional questions. Shi Rulin had already secured a recommendation for graduate studies, so she didn't need to prepare for exams. But she didn't relax either and was instead working on a project for her prospective advisor. She was also a hard-working and outstanding student. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been recommended for the summer camp. But she hadn't expected that upon arriving at the summer camp, she would find that these junior students were working much harder than she had, even giving her a sense of crisis. Dormitory. Bai Lian opened the memory card given to her by academician Ma, which contained notes and research directions recorded by him. Academician Ma was the first teacher in the field of quantum engineering in the country. He had painstakingly laid the foundation for quantum buildings over decades, starting from scratch. With his guidance, Bai Lian's entry into the field was much easier than it had been for him. Ming Dongheng brought over food to her. Bai Lian ate while looking at the construction diagrams, until her phone lit up beside her. It was a message from Mao Kuan. Image? Sister, there are almost no hairs with follicles on Xiaoqi's clothes. It took days to find just one. Xiaoqi was much cleaner than Mao Kuan and Xiaowu, more like an artist who couldn't stand being sloppy. Mao Kuan preserved this strand of hair in a transparent bag. Bai Lian replied with a sentence, leaned back in her seat, and after some thought, she video-called Jiheng. In the video, it was still 10 in the morning at Jiheng's end. Jiheng was in his storeroom. Do you like this color? Jiheng turned the camera around to show Bai Lian the fabric in his video. Even through the camera, the brilliance of a bundle of fabric in the video was apparent. With embroidered cloud patterns, Bai Lian recognized it immediately, cloud brocade. She blurted out. Jianghu wasn't surprised. The first time Bai Lian had come to this storeroom, she had identified several uncommon fabrics. Yes, it is cloud brocade and there's much more here, said Jianghu, who didn't smoke in the storeroom, only caressing this piece of cloud brocade that had been passed down to the present day. He'll take out this piece to make you a coat. Having said that, Jianghu thought for a moment. He'll leave the rest of the fabric to you, how about that? Bai Lian was taken aback. A patch of cloud brocade was as precious as gold. Especially the cloud brocade from Jianghu's storeroom, which was obviously hereditary. Grandpa, I don't know how to preserve these. You don't need to keep them in any special way, Jianghu smiled. Purist Street is almost becoming Embroidery Street. I'd feel reassured leaving them with you. What are you calling me for? He stepped out of the storeroom, closed the door behind him, and turned the video to face Jianghu sitting in the yard. A very abrupt change of subject. Our second uncle and the others still there? Bai Lian didn't continue to inquire. This was something she'd have to discuss with Jianghu in person. Ji Xiaorong was often not at home. He returned to his post a couple of days ago, Jianghu said as he filled his pipe with tobacco, surprised. What do you need him for? Jiawei seems to have gone to Xiqing to negotiate a deal and will probably be on a business trip for over half a month, and then she plans to visit Jiangjing. Bai Lian estimated the time. Her return to Jiangjing was around the same as Jiawei's. She suspected that Xiaoqi's identity was not unfounded. Ji Xian's reaction had been one of surprise when he first saw Xiaoqi. Even Jianghu, who was usually so indifferent, treated Xiaoqi differently from others. A month passed quickly. In that time, Bai Lian and Ning Xiao and the others were busy absorbing the knowledge from this summer camp. The day before their return, the 50-something students went to visit the local scientific research base and science museum. Compared to Jiangjing, there was certainly a gap in technology. This transistor is made with nanoscale semiconductor material. Its chip processing is nearly 10,000 times higher than traditional silicon chips. It's prohibited from being sold to us. Director Meng told the students about the Science Museum's exhibits before sighing. You all need to work hard. Ning Xiao looked at the nanotransistor and nodded from the back of the crowd. But the Science Museum held more than just nanotransistors. Bai Lian followed Director Meng and learned about many new technologies, with the top floor being off-limits to foreigners. February 28th. The tickets for the return flight were still arranged by the school. But this time, due to the tight availability of tickets, the school arranged for people to leave in two groups. Chapter 792, 310 is back. _38 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, the last wave was the next morning at 8. Bai Lian and Ning Xiao were among the first group to fly back to their country at 8 in the morning. The group had their luggage packed early, and Bai Lian had also contacted Jianghu, who was set to return to Jiangjing today. Ming Dongheng went back 7 days earlier to pick up Jianghe. However, just before departing, there was someone in the Jiang University team who had to go back a day early to attend a lab interview. Bai Lian thought about it and let him go back ahead of time. Then you leave tomorrow. Director Meng had grown familiar with Bai Lian over the nearly 1-month camp. He was leading the last batch of students home, well be on the same flight. Bai Lian sat on her luggage. That's fine. Then he'll contact the airport staff now to change it for you. As long as the students hadn't left, Director Meng couldn't rest easy. If anything indeed happened, Shun Yu would have to fly over here overnight to find him. You come with me. I'm not reassured with the afternoon flight. VIP lounge. Jiang Fulai saw the message sent by Tang Ming, turned off his phone, and told his assistant, change to the 11 o'clock flight. He too was booked for the 8 o'clock flight, but hadn't checked in yet. The 11 o'clock flight had a smaller plane, which wasn't suitable for bulk ticket purchases, so Jiang University hadn't booked this flight. He looked down and flipped to Bai Lian's WeChat, asking where she was. The assistant and the bodyguard followed close behind. Young Master Jiang, where are you going? The assistant anxiously scanned the surrounding crowd. Jiang Fulai didn't speak, he just stood in the crowd and scanned around, quickly spotting Bai Lian in black knitwear sitting on her baggage. He quickened his pace towards her. When she saw him, Bai Lian stood up. Director Meng was still chatting with Bai Lian about how she shone brightly at this summer camp, thinking that she was indeed worthy of surpassing Liang Wuyu as the top scorer in the college entrance examination. Have you ever considered joining us in the materials science department? While he was talking to Bai Lian, he quickly noticed that tall figure in the crowd, with an aura of pristine coldness recognizable at a glance. Director Meng thought, wasn't Jiang Fulai also on the 8 o'clock flight? Why hasn't he checked in and taken the shuttle yet? Heiress relaxed back instantly stiffened, and before he could speak, he heard his student Bai, surprisingly asking beside him, "Why haven't you left yet?" The tone was very familiar. Director Meng saw the chill in the young Jiang's light-colored eyes, and alarm bells rang in his head. This new student was really as fearless as a newborn calf not afraid of tigers to speak to Jiang Fulai like that. Could Jiang Fulai chat casually and amiably with people like that? Yet Jiang Fulai didn't answer Bai Lian. She had stayed behind without telling him, and he was somewhat emotional. "Young Master Jiang," Director Meng was both embarrassed and nervous. "Why haven't you left?" Jiang Fulai glanced at Bai Lian, speaking this time, "Changed flights." "You changed flights too?" Director Meng was surprised. "Yeah," Jiang Fulai responded indifferently, noticing Bai Lian was still sitting on her luggage. After a moment of silence, he handed her a piece of cake he had brought from the VIP lounge. "Come with me." The 8 o'clock flight was still only at 7:30, and since it was early, everyone was waiting for their in-flight meal, having skipped breakfast. Bai Lian accepted the cake. Jiang Fulai reached out to pull her suitcase, probably not having ever pulled his own before. Director Meng and the assistant watched as the suitcase was handled by Jiang Fulai's slender fingers, feeling the scene was incredibly surreal. They had yet to react. Being able to leave earlier, Bai Lian didn't refuse. She left with Jiang Fulai and bid Director Meng farewell. "Director Meng, I'm leaving now, see you back in the country." Jiang Fulai also paused, slightly turned his body, his gentle phoenix eyes lowered respectfully as he bid Director Meng goodbye. The startled Director Meng finally came to his senses and said his goodbyes repeatedly. It was only then that Jiang Fulai's assistant caught up and said, "Director Meng, farewell." Leaving only Director Meng standing there, watching Bai Lian leave with Jiang Fulai, his long-held suspicions were finally confirmed. Why Jiang Fulai had come over as a team leader. At the end of February, the scores for the postgraduate entrance examination were also released. Jianzhe topped the humanities exam with 479 points, while Su Wenyao scored 486, entering the interview phase as the number one in the science exam. These exam results caused quite a stir at Jiang University. Jianzhe arrived in Jiangjing yesterday to prepare for his interview, knowing Bai Lian was returning. He and Su Wenyao were both waiting for Bai Lian at Shanghai apartment. Bai Lian was about to return to her country. Ji Heng reached Jiangjing a day before her. Not only did he bring luggage, but he also brought a whole bunch of fabrics from the storeroom over. Mu Yining knew Bai Lian wasn't in Jiangjing, but upon learning Ji Heng was arriving, personally took time off to pick up Ji Heng in advance. Chapter 793, 310 is back. _4 She was going to pick up Ji Heng, but Ren Wanxian didn't really want to go as she had a social gathering to attend. However, Ren Qian said gravely that she must go to pick up Ji Heng, so Ren Wanxian followed Mu Yining to the airport. It was Ming Dongheng who brought Ji Heng to Jiangjing. He and Ji Heng stood at the intersection waiting for Mu Yining's car, with 4 large suitcases stacked behind them. The suitcases looked quite old and the locks on the sides were a bit rusty. They clearly had a history. Passengers coming and going from the airport hadn't seen such historically significant items, and those passing by often took a second glance at the 4 blackwood suitcases. One of the suitcases was half as tall as a person. "Grandpa," Mu Yining parked the car, got out from the driver's seat and seeing the suitcases next to Ji Heng, she asked in surprise, "What are these?" Ji Heng looked down. They contained fabric and books. He didn't elaborate. Mu Yining already knew that Ji Heng often made clothes for Bai Lian. She was just surprised that Ji Heng brought so much stuff with him. Why bother bringing it so far when you can buy anything in Jiangjing? Ren Wanxian could see the blackwood suitcase from afar, with its noticeably rusty locks. Nowadays who still use such items with a sense of age? She covered her nose, not approaching too closely, only standing 2 meters away with a slight look of disdain at the dark, murky suitcases. The Jiang family also drove over. As Ming Dongheng loaded the suitcases into the car, moving on to the third one, he asked Ji Heng, "Shall we move them all to Mississippi Bay's place?" Ji Heng seemed to notice Ren Wanxian at that moment. He paused before speaking to her. "These are your grandmother's belongings, including some fabric and the phoenix robe she left for you to use. Do you want to take a suitcase with you?" Ren Wanxian forced a smile, her gaze lingering on the suitcase. "Grandfather, Aunt has prepared plenty of clothes for me, and my mother is coming tomorrow with many clothes for me too." The aunt she mentioned, of course, was Mu Yining. And Ren Jiawei had her own mid to high-end clothing brand. Ji Heng nodded and said directly to Ming Dongheng, "Move everything over to Alien." The following day Bai Lian arrived at Jiangjing Airport. And Ren Jiawei, busy for so long, also arrived in Jianghu around the same time as Bai Lian. Ren Jiawei had just gotten to the parking lot when she saw the car of a business partner. Before getting into the car, she saw a black vehicle stop not far away. She hadn't paid much attention to it, but when she saw a young man getting out from the driver's seat, she paused momentarily. Her eyes followed the young man. "Ms. Ren?" The business partner, seeing her hesitate, asked in confusion. Ren Jiawei came back to her senses with her gaze still on the young man. "It's nothing." Inside the airport, Bai Lian's suitcase was with assistant Jianghu Lai, which she didn't take, only using her phone to call Jianghu. "He'll be there soon, I'm coming straight over." "Want you go back to take a nap?" Jianghu Lai handed her the cape. The weather was warm now and Bai Lian wasn't wearing a cape. Seeing Xiaoqi's figure, she waved to Jianghu Lai. "He'll go have a meal at the Mu family's home and then head back." After so many years, Mu Yining had invited her numerous times, and she still hadn't visited the Mu family home. Jianghu Lai was also heading back to the Jiang family, and the two departed in separate cars. The Mu family home. Knowing that Ji Heng and Bai Lian were coming over, Mu Yining and Ji Xiaojun had specially cleared their afternoon and evening schedules, preparing many dishes. The Dong family, aware of this, came over with gifts as well. When Bai Lian arrived, a bunch of people were chatting and laughing in the Lanlin pavilion. Ji Heng seemed to have heard something quite surprising. Bai Lian handed her cape to the butler. Mu Yining, who was chatting inside the pavilion, stood up immediately upon seeing her arrival, joyfully exclaiming, "Alien, you're back?" Ji Mulan was holding a child, and upon seeing Bai Lian, she was silent for a moment before she also stood up. Dong Xiaobai and Dong Chuan both rose to their feet. Ren Wanxian, sitting beside Dong Chuan, saw everyone getting up and couldn't help but press her lips together as she stood up. Ren Jiawei, who had not heard about Bai Lian before, was very surprised to see everyone stand up except for Ji Heng and followed suit, though she was puzzled. Bai Lian politely greeted several older individuals, aside from Ji Mulan, before asking what had just happened. "We were talking about Wanxian." Mu Yining also found it quite unexpected as she smiled and said, "You've been abroad for a month and probably don't know, but Wanxian has invested in a project with the Miss of the Ming family. We, the Mu family, are hoping to negotiate for a batch of metal resources, and Wanxian is also in talks with them." It was clear that they were satisfied with Ren Wanxian. They were in the process of transferring power to Ji Xiaojun and Ren Wanxian. Ren Wanxian pursed her lips, looked down with a smile, hiding pride in the depths of her eyes. "Metal resources?" Bai Lian raised her eyebrows, looking at Mu Yining in surprise. Chapter 794. Send for appraisal. On March 11th, Bai Lian's connections _1 Bai Lian sat beside Ren Jiawei. Today Ji Heng, Shen Qing and Ji Xiaojun were all present. Shen Qing left a seat for Bai Lian beside her. Seeing Bai Lian sit on the outside, Mu Yining spoke up, Lian, aren't you sitting beside your aunt? You all are discussing business, so just sit together. They'll go back after I finish eating." Bai Lian took her seat. It was rare for Bai Lian to admit that she didn't understand something. Mu Zhao seized the opportunity to sit next to Bai Lian, and Mu Yining didn't say anything about it. At the dinner table, Ren Wanxian occasionally discussed business matters with Mu Yining, especially concerning the cooperation with the Ming family. Bai Lian wasn't really listening, she was focused on eating. Having spent over a month abroad, although Ming Dongheng did bring them Chinese food, most of the time Bai Lian was eating in the cafeteria. Now, facing authentic Chinese food, she couldn't help but feel moved. In the past few months, the Mu family had gradually begun to make a name for themselves in Jianghu. Ren Wangshuan's social circle had also risen to increasingly higher levels. "There's rare earth too?" Mu Yining was very surprised to hear what Ren Wanxian said. "Yes," Ren Wanxian held her teacup. She had researched this information and heard it from a few young ladies in the circle. "Iridium and a massive amount of rare earth resources. Miss Yu is in talks with her senior brother." Mu Yining's fingers tapped on the table, her knuckles turning slightly white with agitation. "There's a key project at a maritime research institute this year. If we can secure these resources, we can sign it." The construction of heavy industry was never simple, and the Mu family had been involved in building heavy industry bases for decades in the past. Since then, the Mu family had encountered misfortune and had almost never recovered. This year, with so many members of the Mu family returning one after another, Mu Yining felt a surge of excitement at the rare opportunity. The two of them chatted, while the rest of the people at the dining table couldn't really join in. Ji Mulan sat on the side holding her child. As a designer, she couldn't understand their conversation and only said, "If there's a need for financial connections, just come to us directly." Ji Mulan now had full confidence to make such a statement. Neglecting Su En's private equity, the travel investment in Xiangqing alone had made the Su family a fortune last year. Su En bought more than just one plot of land in Xiangqing. Not to mention the turnover of the hotel, the land alone had appreciated several times over. The Su family's assets might not match those of the Mu family, but their liquid capital was a frightening figure. Outside, Assistant Wang called for Mu Yining. "President Mu, your clan uncles are here." "They're already here?" Mu Yining stood up, surprised. The Mu clan uncles had witnessed the glory days of the Mu family, and knowing that there was this opportunity, they naturally could not wait, not even for a moment. But today was the day Bai Lian and others had just returned. Just as Mu Yining was pondering this, Ji Heng, who had almost finished his meal, put down his chopsticks. "Go ahead, I'll visit the Buddhist hall." Bai Lian also stood up. "Uncle, Aunt, I'll head back to the apartment first. Jianzhe and the others are still waiting for me." The butler had been silently attentive to Bai Lian's needs. Upon seeing that Bai Lian was leaving, he quickly approached and handed her the cloak. "The butler respects her a great deal," Dong Chuan said quietly as he watched Bai Lian's retreating figure, his eyes slightly narrowing. Anyone with discernment could see the butler's attitude. Towards Bai Lian, the butler showed a deep-seated respect, a respect he did not even show to Ji Xiaojun or even Mu Yining. With Bai Lian and Ji Heng both about to leave, Mu Yining could only escort them out of Lanlin Pavilion. Outside Lanlin Pavilion, the Mu family clan uncles and managers from the side branches were all waiting for Mu Yining. They saw Bai Lian. Manager Su naturally recognized Bai Lian, especially having seen her before with Jianghu Lai. Manager Su politely inquired, "Miss Bai, why didn't you come back for the new year?" Bai Lian stopped and nodded in greeting. "I took a trip abroad." She didn't mention the purpose. The clan uncles and the management of the Mu family just casually greeted Bai Lian. They weren't concerned about where Bai Lian had gone. Jianghu Lai's sudden appearance had certainly drawn their attention to Bai Lian and Ji Xiaojun for a while. But afterwards there was no more news about Bai Lian and Jianghu Lai, and the two were not seen together at the Mu family. Sentiments in aristocratic families were the least reliable. What counted was the matching of social status. The Mu family could once compare with the Jiang family, but now they were not even close to being on the same level. Therefore, seeing Bai Lian and Ji Xiaojun this time, they merely nodded perfunctorily, with their gaze quickly shifting to Ren Wanxian. "Miss Ren, the thing you mentioned earlier to President Mu?" This was the first time the people of the Mu family had ignored Ji Xiaojun and Bai Lian, centering on themselves. Ren Wanxian saw Bai Lian and Xin Qing leaving the mansion with a glance from the corner of her eye and lowered her gaze. Beside her, Ren Jiawei hadn't spoken much today. On their way to the meeting room, Ren Wanxian asked Ren Jiawei, "Mom, what's the matter with you?" Chapter 795. Send for appraisal on March 11th. Bai Lian's connections "Nothing much, I just saw a familiar-looking young man at the airport today." Ren Jiawei shook her head. "You go ahead, I need to chat with our business partners too." Ren Wanxian slightly narrowed her eyes. Outside the gate. "Let Xiaojie take you back." The butler followed behind Bai Lian, telling her about everything that had happened in the Mu family in the last month. "Miss Ren and the second young lady of the Ming family are discussing business. If successful, it could kickstart the two research bases of the Mu family too." The Mu family had been essentially living off their past reserves for over 20 years. Lucky for them, their vast wealth wasn't something that could be spent overnight. Once the car door closed, Xin Qing started talking to Bai Lian. "Alien, you've lost so much weight after being abroad for so long. I'll cook something delicious for you when I return." Actually, Bai Lian hadn't slimmed down much during her trip abroad, as she exercised regularly every day. Health is wealth, and Jiang University wanted them to work for 60 years. But Ning Xiao, Tang Ming, Ding Wenyang and the others had markedly shed weight. Mao Kuan was moving flower pots with a cigarette in his mouth in the glass house. As soon as Xin Qing and Bai Lian returned, he quickly snuffed out the cigarette and greeted them. "Xiao Mao." As soon as Xin Qing returned to Shanghai apartment, she thought of preparing a great meal that evening. "Ning Xiao and the others just got back, so you should eat here tonight too. I'll make a feast." "Thanks, Aunt." Mao Kuan called out loudly. Xin Qing grabbed an eco-friendly bag hung near the entrance and went out to do some grocery shopping, then remembered something. "Where are Xiaoqi and Xiaowo?" "They're busy and don't have time to come over." Mao Kuan saw Xin Qing out. "Aunt, if you buy too much later, remember to call me and I'll come pick you up. Look at my driver's license." He showed off his driver's license to Xin Qing. Xin Qing praised him again for being impressive and hurriedly left. Bai Lian placed her cape to one side and moved the remaining flower pots out to bask in the sun. The ones inside the glasshouse were all peonies. Most of them were moved from the Su family by Gao Yan as presents for Ji Heng to care for. They hadn't bloomed yet but were growing quite well now. Plum blossoms in winter, peonies in spring, these were traditions of the Su family. Sis. After seeing Xin Qing off, Mao Kuan passed a cigarette to Bai Lian and took out a lighter. With the flame protected by his hand, he respectfully lit it for Bai Lian. Bai Lian's lips were deeply colored as she bit the cigarette and exhaled a thin wisp of smoke. Mao Kuan could see the lazy but arrogantly expressive eyes behind the smoke. Bai Lian extended her left hand that had been resting in her pocket. In her palm lay a strand of hair with a follicle. This is... Mao Kuan wasn't foolish, and taking the strand of hair he asked, "Sis, have you found Zioki's relative?" "Not sure yet," Bai Lian said nonchalantly, continuing to walk outside with the cigarette pinched between her slender fingers. "Let's have it tested first." Mao Kuan followed Bai Lian and took out a transparent bag he carried with him, placing the long strand of hair inside. "I'll hand it to Dr. Liu when I visit Shanghai tonight. He's well acquainted with the hospital staff." When Bai Lian returned, she first visited room 503. After paying respects to Granny Wang, she then returned to 303. In the hallway of room 303, there were 4 huge black wooden boxes. They took up almost half of the hallway. They were a bit in the way, so Bai Lian used her phone to ask Jianghu Lai if she could store them in his living room. Jianghu Lai was busy, but he still took a moment to reply with 2 words, "Second floor, Bai Lian." She had Mao Kuan move the boxes to the second floor and went to her study to write a report for Academician Ma, with Tang Ming following her into the study. Upon entering, he saw a rectangular black wooden box on the desk. It was made of the same material as the 4 boxes in the hallway. The difference was that the black wooden box was outlined with exquisite and simple patterns, and the lock mechanism in front was intact. Antique and imposing, Tang Ming felt as if he was looking at a museum relic and was hesitant to touch it. "Is this also from your grandfather?" "Yes." Bai Lian wasn't certain what was inside and placed it on the bookshelf. Bai Lian spent 2 days finishing her research on Academician Ma's USB drive for the past month, as well as completing the report on her recent trip abroad. After that, she went to the Technology Research Center building to find Academician Ma. Assistant Yun, who had become quite familiar with her, had specifically waited for Bai Lian downstairs early on. He adjusted his glasses and said anxiously, "Miss Bai, when you have a moment, please urge Academician Ma to rest a bit. He didn't go back for the new year and lately he hasn't been feeling well." Listening, Bai Lian followed Assistant Yun to meet Academician Ma. Academician Ma had just finished a brief meeting and was drinking water trying to suppress a cough. Bai Lian passed a thick file to him and discreetly observed his complexion. Last summer, Academician Ma had placed all his research onto the USB drive and, after giving Bai Lian a few codes to decrypt, let her slowly get acquainted with it. With his guidance and Bai Lian's talent, it was quite straightforward for her to get started. Chapter 796. Send for appraisal on March 11th. Bai Lian's connections _3. He looked at Bai Lian's research abroad this month, and even his dim eyes brightened a bit. While coughing, he nodded, "Very good." The assistant Yun added water for Academician Ma, and wasn't surprised by the abundant praise from the academician. Bai Lian was right there and Academician Ma was already holding back. Academician Ma was busy, and Bai Lian came this time to check on his condition. After seeing him, she went downstairs with Assistant Yun. When they reached the elevator, they happened to meet a middle-aged man on his way up. Seeing him, Assistant Yun greeted, "Professor Ma." Ma Zhaoxing gave a slight nod to Assistant Yun and hurried onto the elevator. After the man left, Assistant Yun explained to Bai Lian, that was Academician Ma's son, Professor Ma. Though Academician Ma had students aplenty, his only son was not outstanding, having no significant achievements in scientific research. He got his professorship largely due to Academician Ma's influence. Ever since his college days, Academician Ma had essentially given up on him. As a result, the relationship between Academician Ma and his family couldn't be considered good. Xiaohen parked the car in front of the Academy of Sciences building and asked Wen Zhixia in the back seat, "Miss, is this the place?" Wen Zhixia was visiting this place for the first time. Although the Academy of Sciences was marked on the map, ordinary vehicles were usually not allowed on this road. Today was the first time. She saw Bai Lian exiting the building from afar. The weather had turned hot, and today she wore a simple white linen dress, her skin cold and fair, with wisps of hair longer than her eyes, lazily hanging to the side. "Here." When Zhixia lowered the rear window and called out to Bai Lian. Bai Lian got into the car and sent a message to Ming Dongheng that he needn't come over later. "I'll swing by the company on my way back." Wen Jixia closed her laptop, handed the milk tea she brought for Bai Lian to her, crossed her legs and started chatting with Bai Lian. First, I'll deliver a document to my second uncle, then go to see your grandfather. Wen Jixia hadn't paid her New Year's visit to Jianghu this year yet. The one family had been urging her to come over, but Bai Lian and Jianghu had only just returned to Jianghu. She finally found an opportunity today with the trunk filled with supplements and gifts for Jianghu. Bai Lian's fingertips rested on her knees, wearing Bluetooth earphones with her other hand leaning against the car window. Thinking about academician Ma's situation, she watched Wen Jixia sideways and said, "Whatever works." Wen Jixia wanted to ask Bai Lian what brought her to the Academy of Sciences. But seeing her deep in thought, she didn't ask further. They arrived at the one family's company. The receptionist quickly activated the private elevator for Wen Jixia. While pressing the elevator button, the receptionist seemed to recognize Bai Lian, stealing glances at her. As the elevator doors closed, Wen Jixia could still hear the receptionist's almost imperceptible voice. "Seems like that miss from Jianghu University. Since the last Pen and Ocean event, there had been no news about Bai Lian. However, because Yen Lu just released a new song last month, Flat Boat, its popularity surpassed the previous ones by a large margin." Exciting clips of Yen Lu from Great Yong were brought up again, with most featuring her wielding a long spear. Speaking of long spears, snippets from Jianghu University's physics department welcoming party became popular once more. "If you became a celebrity," Wen Jixia turned to Bai Lian and spoke, "you would definitely be more popular than Yen Lu, and I could get you to be the spokesperson for our project." Sister Xan had said this countless times before. Bai Lian made no comment. Ding! The elevator doors opened to the president's office floor. Outside the private elevator, a group of people was waiting. 2 men and 1 woman. Bai Lian had seen them all before, Liu Yuzhang and Lai Qin, and the woman was Wen Jiwei. Seeing Bai Lian, all 3 were surprised but greeted her politely. Bai Lian crossed her arms and followed behind Wen Jixia, exuding a relaxed yet languid air of elegance. Wen Jixia was there to see her second uncle. Liu Yuzhang eyed Wen Jixia and after a brief pause politely invited, "Jixia, we're heading to Xijing, would you and your friend like to come along?" Lai Chen's expression shifted upon hearing Liu Yuzhang invite Wen Jixia, hesitating before looking at Liu Yuzhang. "Yuzhang, this round is arranged by the second miss." Wen Jixia by then had figured out Lai Chen's implication. She had used the last opportunity to expand her social circle. Because of this, Lai Chen and Wen Jiwei became even more wary of her. "You guys go have fun, he'll go to Alien's place for dinner later." She was unaware of the intricate circles within the industry. Liu Yuzhang was Wen Zixia's fiancé. Liu Yuzhang had previously witnessed Bai Lian's connections, and given the few opportunities to see Bai Lian, he had a tough decision to make between Bai Lian and Xijing this time. Yen Lu's endorsement deal was still pending, and today upon hearing that Yen Lu was returning to Jiangjing, there might be a chance for her to appear at this gathering, which was why Liu Yuzhang accepted Lai Chen's invitation. "Jixia," after weighing his options, Liu Yuzhang spoke softly and diplomatically, "He'll pick you up after you finish dinner." He didn't want to miss this opportunity, but he also didn't want to lose the chance to get on good terms with Bai Lian. When Jixia nodded indifferently, maintaining her ladylike demeanor on the surface. Her smile and gestures were all meticulously planned. Bai Lian looked up as if she hadn't noticed Wen Zixia's attitude. Once the 3 of them entered the elevator, it was only then that Wen Zixia's smile faded. She held back an eye roll and, carrying the documents, led Bai Lian into the office. She handed the documents over to Uncle Wen II. Only then did Uncle Wen II realize she had brought Bai Lian over. "Miss Bai," he quickly stood up and shook hands with Bai Lian, "sorry for not greeting you at a distance earlier." "Uncle, you don't need to be so formal with her." In front of a familiar relative, when Jixia showed more of her true nature. "You don't need to be so formal with her." Uncle Wen II felt an urge to scold Wen Jixia. Upon learning that Wen Jixia was going to Bai Lian's house for lunch, Uncle Wen II regretfully did not ask them to stay for a meal. He escorted them to the elevator. Once again arriving on the first floor. Someone had been waiting early at the elevator entrance for her. Miss Jixia, the leader was a middle-aged man, the manager of Wen Zixia's project team. As he approached with a report in hand, "Miss Jiwei's team," Wen Jixia whispered to Bai Lian, "You go to the car and wait for me first." As soon as Bai Lian left, the middle-aged man continued, "Miss Jiwei has hired Lu Su by paying double the endorsement fee." "Double? With that price, couldn't they hire a top-tier star?" When Jixia frowned, "Didn't they get Yen Lu?" When Jixia and Wen Jiwei, along with Lai Qin, each led a project that affected the shareholders' allegiances. With limited funds, Wen Jixia couldn't compete with Wen Jiwei's offer of twice the endorsement fee. In a short time, Wen Jixia truly couldn't find an endorser without any scandals to withstand scrutiny. Even researching Lu Su took a long time for Wen Jixia. Next to the middle-aged man, a young person spoke up passionately, Lai Qin is doing this on purpose. With Bai Lian waiting for her, Wen Jixia raised her hand, you guys go back first, I'll think of a solution. Jianghu Airport. Yen Lu put on a mask and a fisherman's hat and got into the nanny van from the rear. In the nanny van, a Huang in the driver's seat handed her a coffee. Miss Xn, do you want to go to the old city or Jiangyin first? Removing her mask to take the coffee, Yen Lu with cold and stunning eyes replied, let's go to Shanghai apartment first. Shanghai apartment? A Huang immediately set up the navigation to Shanghai apartment and drove there. Don't rush with the endorsement. Miss Xn sat beside Yen Lu. Miss Bai had inquired last time, go see her later and find out what she's thinking. I know, Yen Lu flipped open the script. At 11 in the morning there was no traffic. Nearing noon, the black nanny van finally arrived at Shanghai apartment. 103. When Jixia watched Tang Ming and Jianghu play Go, doubting her life choices until the doorbell rang. She perked up and hurriedly got up to go to the door. Chapter 797. When Jixia is shocked, Brother Jiang makes a move. 1 Shanghai apartment security had always been excellent. Yen Lu had visited Building 5 a few times, but this time there was no one else around. She didn't encounter anyone else in this building. After entering the building, she took off her mask and hung her sunglasses on the lapel of her coat, holding in her right hand a little trinket for Ji Heng and Jianghu. Her left hand was still on the doorbell. The door was opened by an unfamiliar girl. Yen Lu didn't recognize her, but since Bai Lian always knew many people, she roughly guessed that this person must be a friend of Bai Lian's. Hello, I'm Yen Lu. When Jixia maintained the posture of holding the doorknob, her gaze somewhat drifting, Yen Lu sister, who are you looking for? From the kitchen, Zhang Xiais, who brought out the dishes, saw the figure outside the door and quickly placed the dishes on the table. Yen sister, you're here. Yen Lu had grown accustomed to fans over the year. Seeing Wen Zixia's reaction, she roughly guessed that the person in front of her was a fan of hers. Hello. Then she stepped aside and entered. Tang Ming had lost another game of chess, and just as he saw Yen Lu coming, he took the opportunity to stand up and go to the kitchen to help with the dishes. The room was full of Bai Lian's classmates. Everyone knew Yen Lu. It was obvious that they were all very good friends. Shen Qing enthusiastically invited Wen Jixia to sit at the table, right across from Yen Lu, who was quietly talking to a boy. Wen Jixia was not familiar with the boy, only knowing he was Zhang Xiais, Bai Lian's high school classmate. After dinner, Wen Jixia followed Bai Lian to room 303. She sat on the sofa in room 303, still in a state of detachment. Bai Lian pressed the remote controls button, sat next to Wen Jixia, and methodically poured a cup of tea with his eyes cast down. He handed it over succinctly, drink tea. Wen Jixia took the white porcelain teacup and took a sip. The temperature was just right, the tea was clear, and tea touched by Bai Lian always tasted much better. You and Yen Lu, are you close? When Jixia had heard, there had been multiple exchanges between Yen Lu and Bai Lian at the dinner table. Among so many people at the dinner table, only Bai Lian was called Miss Bai by Yen Lu. Although from the time Bai Lian gave her an autographed CD of Yen Lu, when Jixia had speculated that Bai Lian probably knew Yen Lu. But she had not expected them to be so familiar with each other. Yen Lu had become famous just within the span of a year. Both her TV dramas and songs had become immensely popular. Not to mention domestically, she had many fervent fans overseas. No one in the industry could replicate her success. Yeah, it's all right. Bai Lian rested his hand on the sofa, leaning back in an unusually relaxed position, his exquisite jaw slightly lifted, tuning into a movie channel. We're friends. This casual mention of friends brought Wen Jixia back to her senses. Damn. You must have known her since Xiangqing, right? Bai Lian, I shared her first song, did you know her back then? Bai Lian continued to remain silent. Alright you. When Jixia was about to say something more when the door to room 303 was pushed open. At the door, Jianghu Lai, removing his coat and wearing a white shirt, calmly looked at the two people on the sofa, gave Wen Jixia a slight nod, noble yet polite, although his pale eyes betrayed a touch of coldness. When Jixia only felt that this encounter with young Master Jiang seemed colder than before. She didn't dare to continue speaking. By chance, her phone rang, and like grabbing onto a lifeline, when Jixia walked to the balcony with her phone. The caller was Liu Zhang. He was coming to pick her up. It wasn't long before Liu Zhang's car arrived. When Wuxia, wrapped in her coat, was waiting at the entrance of Building 5, accompanied by Bai Lian and Jianghu. Liu Yuzhang sat in the passenger seat. The driver was his secretary. He hadn't expected that Bai Lian would live in this unimpressive-looking apartment next to Jianghu University, which was quite surprising. After getting in the car, when Wuxia sat in the back, graceful and virtuous, with a faint scent of perfume in the car. It seems the car must have carried another woman not long ago. The driver was Liu Yuzhang's secretary, who politely greeted the future Mrs., discreetly glancing in the rearview mirror. By merit, when Wuxia was recognized by the Yu family, she was on par with Ming Zongyao from the finance department of Jianghu University at the School of Finance and Economics. But she was slightly less talented and pretty. The secretary thought that in the vast city of Jiangjing, only the distinguished Miss Bai had a presence that could match Ming Zongyao, which was why those who knew both of them felt sorry for Ming Zongyao. As for the affairs of wealthy families, who knows? The car reached the one-family tower, and Liu Yuzhang intended to accompany Wen Wuxia upstairs, but as he got out of the car, the secretary received a phone call. Chapter 798. When Wuxia is shocked, Brother Jiang makes a move. _2 Liu Yuzhang hurriedly left. When Wuxia returned to the project team, where trouble was still waiting for her. Shanghai apartment. Yan Lu was chatting with Pu Xiaohan, who showed her a puppet video she had just edited. Lu Jie, I heard from good people that you're going to take on a puppet movie, so I'll send you all this material. Pu Xiaohan had shot a lot of material, with more than 90 videos totaling up to 40 hours, all filled with Grandpa Tao's lifelong accumulated data. You filmed so much? Yan Lu opened WeChat to receive the videos sent by Pu Xiaohan. Receiving so many videos was slow, so Yan Lu put her phone downstairs to wait for the transfer and went upstairs to find Bai Lian. Upstairs. Jiang Fulai leaned against the desk, questioning Wen Wuxia about the matter in a calm and unhurried manner. Bai Lian had also alluded to it while eating just now. When Wuxia was in her own project group, the group she led was responsible for the Wen family's hair dryers. The Wen family had many electrical appliances under its name, and only the washing machines and refrigerators were doing all right, but others like hair dryers and soy milk makers were about to cease production due to profitability issues. Because production was about to stop, the Wen family handed over several projects to the younger generation. Whoever could revive these economic links would hold a higher status in the eyes of Wen family shareholders. Hair dryers. Jiang Fulai crossed his arms and lightly lowered his eyelashes, leisurely pondering. Outside, Yan Lu came to look for Bai Lian and saw Jiang Fulai still contemplating hair dryers. Bai Lian got up and went outside. Yan Lu was looking for Bai Lian to discuss the matter about Wen Wuxia. Following the plan Yu and Xanjia had, Bai Lian did not want to disrupt her and Wang Xin's plan, her fingers tapping on the sofa. Wuxia has a project, but my current idea is Qin Si. Qin Si was the leading lady of Blossoms on the Tree, and was also the person whom the theater was currently striving hard to promote. She was currently very popular, not unlike a first-tier star. However, she was far from matching Yan Lu's popularity. I don't have any brand orientation at the moment. Yan Lu knew of Bai Lian's concerns. He'll send every collaboration for evaluation, don't worry. Okay, Bai Lian was not very familiar with this circle. The Wen family, Wen Wuxia, she's working on a project and needs an endorsement. They must have contacted your team, but the funds were not sufficient, so they probably did not continue to approach you. Yan Lu nodded, sent a message to Wang Xian to look for the invitation previously sent by Wen Zixia's team. There were too many people inviting Yan Lu for endorsements. This included a number of well-known foreign brands. But now Yan Lu only endorsed Shen Kong. Apart from that, it was only the official stamp of tourism for Xiangqing. Within an hour, the team found the collaboration proposal that Wen Wuxia had previously sent to Yan Lu's team. It's an old electrical brand. Wang Xian looked at the information researched on the computer. A traditional national product, but in recent years with the rise of e-commerce, they have gradually declined. Looking for a spokesperson during this period indeed seems like a way out. Since it's a friend of Miss Bai, I'm reassured. What do you think? Upon hearing Wang Xin's words, Yan Lu calmly said, the endorsement fee doesn't have to be too high. Where are you? I'll talk to the company. Bai Lian had helped her numerous times, from Zhang Xi's to Daong to writing songs. Yan Lu was very clear on the reason behind her current popularity. It was all thanks to someone else. But since Bai Lian and her colleagues were in scientific research, and she was just of average intelligence, she couldn't be of much help in any case. She had originally endorsed Shen Kong for free. But as Shen Kong became a hit in the second half of the year, Yan Lu found out that she was the one who actually benefited. Netizens increased their esteem for her when they knew she endorsed traditional medicine. Now that she finally had a chance to help a friend of Bai Lian, Yanlu felt that she could be useful too. Monday. When family building. When Jixia just arrived at the project team. The project manager saw when Jixia hurried over with his phone. They offered double the endorsement fee. Should we look for someone else? Recently there's a girl group called Song Shui. He momentarily forgot the name of this girl group's champion. The young woman reminded Manager Zhang her name is Song Xueni. Oh right, Song Xueni. Manager Zhang followed when Jixia to her office. Shall we choose her as the spokesperson? If you agree we will contact her immediately. It was already too late to conduct a background check at this point. When Jixia had never heard of Song Xueni either, and her fame definitely couldn't compare to Lu Su's. But at the moment there was no other choice. When Jixia picked up the files on her desk, let's contact her after the morning meeting. It was Monday and several project teams had to report on their progress. The office. Uncle Wen sat in front, and the people from the project team sat on both sides. Chapter 799. When Jixia is shocked, Brother Jiang makes a move. 3 When Jixia had consistently instructed the marketing department to promote the Wen family hair dryers through soft advertising. Last week, sales volume was the highest among the groups, and this month they were supposed to sign a full endorsement deal with Lu Su, but the contract wasn't signed yet when Jiwei poached him with a double salary offer. When Jiwei discussed the project book eloquently. Below, Manager Zhang and several others looked at Wen Jiwei's group, filled with anger. After the meeting ended, second Uncle Wen stood up with his notebook in hand and looked at Wen Jixia. Your project proposal this month is not up to standard. Not far away. The people in Wen Jiwei's group, upon hearing second Uncle Wen's voice, looked down and a mocking smile curled at the corners of their mouth. After exiting the office doors, Manager Zhang and the others finally spoke indignantly. We offered Lu Su a market rate. When Zixia's team doubled the figure last minute before the contract signing, obviously targeting us. This Lu Su, he must have known them before. It wasn't hard to imagine by throwing in their lot with another manufacturer at the last minute, Lu Su was clearly in cahoots with them. They may double the pay but it'll take time for them to break even. When Jixia spoke calmly, have the person in charge of public relations come see me. She took out her phone about to make a call. Then she saw a message on WeChat. It was from Bai Lian. Send me one of the manufacturing diagrams for your hair dryer. What did she want the structural diagram for? It's not like the hair dryer was top secret information, so when Jixia sent someone to get the manufacturing diagram. Behind her, Manager Zhang returned to his desk, about to pick up the phone to call Song Xueni's agent when his phone rang, and he reached out to answer it. The voice that came from the other end of the receiver was very polite. Hello, this is Wang Xen. I saw that you had sent an email to our company yesterday. Manager Zhang, after hanging up the phone, looked up in a daze. He ended the call with a series of mmms and ahs, and the two sides agreed on a time to meet. A dial tone came through the earpiece. 3 minutes later, Manager Zhang finally snapped back to reality and looked at Wen Jixia. Miss Wen? Manager Zhang swallowed hard. The staff of the project team handed over the manufacturing diagram to Wen Jixia, who photographed it and sent it to Bai Lian, then looked up. Go ahead. Yan Lu's agent, Sister Xan, has arranged to meet with us this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Manager Zhang started. She wants to discuss an endorsement deal with us. Elsewhere. After signing his name, Lai Qin extended his hand to the man across from him. Lu Su, a pleasure to do business with you. Lu Su also set down his pen and shook hands with him, smiling. The two were high school classmates, and it wasn't until a New Year's gathering that Lai Qin found out when Jixia had approached Lu Su. He then told Lu Su to delay the signing, aiming to deliver a decisive blow to Wen Jixia at the last moment. Lu brother, after Lai Qin left with the contract, his agent spoke up. Won't this have offended the third young miss of the Wen family? Lu Su slowly pulled a mask out of his pocket, unconcerned. I have looked into it. This third young miss has just returned to Jianghu. People in the circle don't hang out with her. Don't worry. Having attended the same high school as Lai Qin, he naturally came from a well-off background and was well-resourced within the Jianghu circle. It was for this reason he knew that when Jiwei was part of the circle that included Su Jini and Ming Zongyao. Moreover, this hair dryer is about to be discontinued soon, Lu Su continued. It's not worth wasting our time here. The agent, knowing Lu Su was always smart, felt relieved to hear this statement. The two headed towards the elevator bank. As the elevator on the left arrived, Lu Su saw a middle-aged woman stepping out. He paused, then hurried over, greeting her with a beaming smile. Sister XN. Sister XN stopped her stride, smiling at Lu Su. Mr. Lu. Are you and Sister Lu also in Jianghu? Lu Su was very polite. Not to mention Yen Lu's high status in the industry, but the two powerhouses behind her were no ordinary figures. Dean of the Ma Institute needed no introduction, and Bai Jian was directly collaborating with the official theater. Even Lu Su couldn't afford to take a high stance in front of these two. The Ma Institute, the theater, and the rumored Zhongxing group behind Yen Lu, none were entities Lu Su could afford to provoke. They waited for Wang Xian to leave before entering the elevator. Lu Su's agent was curious. Sister XN has also come to Jianghu. I wonder if Yen Lu came with her. Bai Lian, after receiving Wuxia's message, printed out the manufacturing diagram and looked down at it, unable to discern anything noteworthy. Forward the message to Jianghu Lai. Aerospace Research Center. No need for solar panels, the thermal energy produced by the decay of radioactive elements is sufficient for it to operate. Jianghu Lai held a pencil between his middle finger and index finger, methodically pointing at the schematic on the panel. The extendable arm here is a laser device. As his words fell, the slide instantly changed to a next, more complex structural diagram. The office lighting shone on him, outlining his slightly cold and hard jawline. He explained in detail unhurriedly, his voice consistently indifferent. Most people in the office were drawing the structural diagrams in their notebooks and noting down the key points. Only Academician Ma was sitting at the front, occasionally coughing twice, not speaking. He seemed not in the best of spirits. After the explanation was complete, a line of researchers left quietly and in an orderly fashion. Jianghu Lai put the pencil into his pocket and then took out his mobile phone from it. Seeing two messages, his indifferent expression softened slightly, and he looked down to reply with a few words, his thin, cool lips curving ever so slightly. In the office, someone noticed his change and nearly tripped and fell. Academician Ma stood up, seeing his demeanor and somewhat understanding, said, "She is now my student." Jianghu Lai returned to his own office without arguing with Academician Ma, simply said in a cold voice, "It's most important that you take good care of your health, not leaving a mess behind would be best." In reality, Academician Ma's health had not kept up after the new year, leading to a part of the aerospace project being handed over to Jianghu Lai. The young master Jiang had yet to complete his holiday, and this was a complaint. Academician Ma wanted to say a few words, but then he saw Jianghu Lai sit down and begin to draw on a blank sheet of paper. The precision of his drawing was comparable to machine rendering, even better than SolidWorks. Academician Ma blinked, quickly adjusting his glasses, and stood beside Jianghu Lai to watch for a while, originally intending to see if the other party was drafting some new type of detector or a ballistic trajectory chart. After half an hour, Academician Ma realized belatedly, "Is this a turbine?" But it didn't quite look like it. Jianghu Lai added another stroke and said calmly, "Hair dryer." Academician Ma. He had thought of a bunch of answers but never this one. Preposterous, it was simply preposterous. Really, what exactly are you doing with those hands of yours? Academician Ma walked out of Jianghu Lai's office in a daze. Inside the office, Jianghu Lai combined the manufacturing diagram Bai Lian gave him with something else that came to mind, picked up his phone and sent Bai Lian a message. "Would you use a hair dryer if it could dry hair super fast?" Bai Lian, "Possible, okay." 3 days later. In the coffee shop beneath building number 1 for doctoral students in Jianghu University's Xinyao district. Bai Lian took the blueprint that he handed to her, about the things Jianghu Lai was researching. The hair dryer he modified. This wouldn't blow like a tornado, would it? She pressed on her phone, calling Wuxia. "Where are you?" Wuxia was at the Wen families. They had just signed a contract with Yen Lu, and the whole team had been as energetic as if they were on steroids these past few days. At the company, Wuxia stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, guessing that Bai Lian must need something from her and said directly, "Shall I come to Jianghu University to find you?" It would be a good opportunity to discuss the issue with Yen Lu with Bai Lian. Ah. Bai Lian looked up at the sky, folding the blueprint neatly and putting it in her pocket, pressing the center of her forehead. "Then come over, I happen to have something for you." The call ended. When Wuxia saw the address Bai Lian had sent. The coffee shop at building number 1 for doctoral students in Jianghu University's Xinyao district. Chapter 800, 313 Two people are not like cousins, test result. _1 When Wuxia was visiting the doctoral building in Xinyao district for the first time. The area wasn't large and was quite remote, with no teaching buildings around. Normally, other than the school's own staff coming to clock in, there were hardly any passers-by. The cafe was also quiet. As soon as Wen Jixia arrived, she saw Hewen sitting opposite Bai Lian, the two of them discussing mathematical models in low voices. She sat down next to Bai Lian. Hi. Hewen was sitting across from her with a silver laptop in front of him, his fingers resting on the touch screen. Wen Jixia didn't know Hewen, and she couldn't understand most of the conversation between Bai Lian and him. She simply held the coffee Bai Lian had ordered for her, with one hand on her knee and the other holding the coffee cup, watching Bai Lian interact with Hewen from the corner of her eye. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, a car marked with the Institute's special logo slowly came to a halt. Hewen caught a glimpse of the car out of the corner of his eye, quickly finished his coffee, grabbed his laptop and notebook and headed out the door. I've got to go. It was only after he left that Wen Jixia spoke to Bai Lian. Who was that just now? Hewen. Bai Lian redirected his attention, recalling the matter at hand. How is the hairdryer project progressing? Yen Lu is taking promotional photos, Wen Jixia said, taking a sip of her hot coffee to suppress her excitement. I'm just worried if this project might affect her commercial value. Aside from leading the project, Wen Jixia was also a fan of Yen Lu. Having Yen Lu endorse an about-to-fail hairdryer simply wasn't befitting of her status. Wen Jixia voiced her concerns. Our hairdryer is too common and lacks renown. Yen Lu should be endorsing those international big brands. It might not be that common, Bai Lian said while picking up his coffee cup, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the side of the cup as he listened to Wen Jixia. What do you mean? Wen Jixia was about to ask what was out of the ordinary. But Bai Lian stretched out his hand and passed a piece of paper to Wen Jixia. Here, take this. Wen Jixia reached out and took it. It was an approximately 50-centimeter wide blueprint. Wen Jixia hadn't studied electromechanics, but she had at least been in an international class in high school and could make out a bit of the generator principle. There was a clearly noticeable airplane-like logo at the bottom right. What's this? A blueprint for the hairdryer. Bai Lian guessed that Jianghu must have been pondering over this since last summer vacation, otherwise it couldn't have been produced so quickly. Take it back and discuss it with the rest of the project team. Still surprised by the blueprint provided by Bai Lian, Wen Jixia took the paper back to the company. Manager Zhang and the product team pondered over it for a while. So this works by applying a high voltage to water with electrodes, atomizing to generate water ions. Miss, we should really make a prototype of this design. Wen Jixia nodded. Do make sure to find reliable people to customize the parts. Custom part manufacturing usually took quite a long time, but the Wen family had their own workshop, capable of completing the customization in 2 or 3 days. Bai Lian brought several cups of milk tea back to the laboratory. He wanted to ask Zhou Wenqing for a couple of days off to visit Academician Ma. Junior sister, when you go in later, there are people in the teacher's office, who you inserted a straw into her drink and leaned to whisper. There's been a lot of people looking for the teacher in the past month. Might be due to a promotion, Ding Wenyang added from the side. You know, Professor Zhou has just been promoted to vice dean. That could be it, Tang Ming said, bringing over a report, his gaze shifting towards Bai Lian. But I think there's probably more to it. At the Qin family's residence, Ren Wanxian was standing outside the courtyard with the Dong family, as Elder Dong was giving her instructions in a low voice. After you go in, there's no need to talk too much. I will speak on your behalf. Just be bold, and even if you feel scared, don't bow your head. The old master doesn't like that. After repeatedly making sure Ren Wanxian understood, Elder Dong led her in. Inside Elder Chen's tea room, President Jian was brewing tea for Elder Chen. His movements were unhurried, and the rich tea poured smoothly from the spout. His demeanor exhibited a leisureliness that set him apart from others. You've improved a lot in your tea brewing, Elder Chen remarked as he sipped from his cup. Did she teach you? She doesn't have the patience to teach me. I learned by observing her, said President Jian, glancing at the time. He then set down the teapot and stood up. Elder Chen, I need to head back now. He had a class that evening. As he left through the archway, he happened to run into several members of the Dong family escorting Ren Wanxian. Elder Dong recognized President Jian and greeted him politely. Ren Wanxian, standing beside him, looked up and gave President Jian an extra glance, feeling that he looked very familiar.